Good evening. I want to call this meeting of the Durham City Council to order at 7:05 on Monday night, May the 3rd, 2021. I'm sorry we're starting a little late tonight, friends. We had a little technical difficulty, but we're glad to be with you all. I certainly want to welcome everyone here tonight, my wonderful colleagues, our great staff, and all the people at home who are listening, however it is that you may be listening to us tonight. We're so glad to have you. Before we have our moment of silence, I want to mention two members of our Durham City family who we have lost since our last meeting. One is Jocelyn Chadwell, the beloved wife of Deputy City Manager Keith Chadwell. All of us who knew Jocelyn, and I did, and just knew her to be just a wonderful, graceful, lovely person. And our hearts go out to Keith and to their family, and we will remember Jocelyn always as the bright spirit that she was. And then to A.J. Marsh, the young son of former Deputy Police Chief Anthony Marsh, who lost his life in the Bull City not long ago and was buried here this past weekend. A young man of great promise, a wonderful young man who lost his life senselessly, was murdered here in Durham. And our hearts again go out to Chief Marsh, to Frida, to their entire family. So friends, as we remember them and as we think about our work together tonight and the good work we are planning to do this evening, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Councilmember Reese, would you please lead us in the pledge to the flag?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, colleagues, city staff, and members of the public who are watching or listening at home. I will now say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Freelon.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Middleton.
I'm here.
Councilmember Reese.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And now we'll proceed to our ceremonial items. And the first ceremonial item is one that I always look forward to. And this is the Proclamation for Children's Mental Health Awareness Month. And Tika Dempson is here from Alliance Health. It's always wonderful to see Tika in person. We all know Tika, and she's a wonderful friend to many of us. And I'm sorry we can't be with her tonight in person, but she's here to, as she is every year, to receive this proclamation. So let me read it. Whereas addressing the complex behavioral and mental health needs of our children, youth, and families is fundamental to the future of Durham and North Carolina. And whereas the leadership in Durham, North Carolina recognizes that addressing the complex mental health needs and treatment be on par with medical needs and treatment, and addressing the social emotional development are essential early foundations to ensure the best outcomes for our children's well-being. And whereas the United States Department of Health and Human Services identified that 1 out of 5 of our state's 2.2 million children live with a mental health condition, and the North Carolina Center for State Health Statistics data report that suicide is the second leading cause of death for children ages 10 to 17 in our state, families shall not feel stigma and shame to seek treatment for their children and youth, and be able to discuss openly their need for help without public retribution. And whereas research shows it is important to seek help early and get effective treatment for trauma, mental health challenges, and substance use disorders among children and adolescents, and provide them with quality opportunities to live resilient, healthy, and productive lives. And whereas available school-based mental health programs and positive behavior interventions and supports should be considered as best practice and be encouraged to be practiced in every Durham, North Carolina public school. And whereas children are recognized for having unique needs for recovery of mental health, emotional, behavioral, and substance use issues, and not being combined with the adult mental health population for treatment. And whereas Durham understands children with mental health challenges and their families benefit from access to timely services, supports, and crisis response systems that are family-driven, youth-guided, and culturally appropriate. They also benefit from the integrated behavioral health in the healthcare, education, child welfare, and juvenile justice systems. And whereas the city of Durham, along with the state of North Carolina, is demonstrating its commitment to children's mental health through all child, youth, adult serving systems to support children's emotional resilience and well-being, emotional and behavioral health issues, join to recognize Children's Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, therefore, I, Stephen M. Schul, Mayor of the city of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2021 as Children's Mental Health Awareness Month in Durham, and hereby urge all residents to commend its observance. Witness my hand and the corporate seal of the city of Durham, North Carolina, this, the 3rd day of May, 2021. So thank you very much, Ms. Dempson. And are you available to be heard, Ms. Dempson?
Yes, I had to take a moment because in all the years of knowing you, I think this is the first time you ever called me Miss Dempson. so
Tika, I'll call you Tika. It was great
yeah,
to see you.
That is fine. A lot of people don't even realize I have a last name. So I am really grateful to each of you. And I don't say that lightly because had you not had the strength and the courage and wisdom to really acknowledge children's mental health, a lot of our children wouldn't become healthy citizens and grow. Because of your belief and being steadfast in the mental health movement is opening doors for many children, especially our youth, who do not see hope. And that's a sad thing for our community when a child doesn't see hope. I can't thank you enough. We've been on this journey since I'm kind of aging myself, but since 2020 when we implemented the system of care approach. And I just say thank you. Thank you for your continued support. Including Charlie Reese doing precinct 22. We still, we appreciate what you do when you visit. But again, never stop believing in our children and finding and supporting them with hope. And I say thank you. So hopefully soon we will see each other in person. And Steve and Charlie will tell you I'm a hugger. So hopefully I'll get to hug again. And I appreciate everything each of you are doing to lead our city. Thank you so much.
Ms. Dempson, thank you so much. We appreciate you on all the wonderful work that you do, and we look forward to the hugs.
Thank you.
All right. Our second agenda item tonight is the Proclamation for National Drinking Water Week proclamation. I'm sorry, the Proclamation for National Drinking Water Week, and I'll be reading that one. Whereas water is a basic and essential need of all living things, and whereas only tap water provides public health protection, fire protection, support for our economy, and the quality of life we enjoy. And whereas the city delivers a reliable supply of high quality, award-winning drinking water. And whereas as stewards, we must advocate for water infrastructure maintenance and improvements to meet the needs of future generations. And whereas the city continues to be a leader in source water protection and recognizes the potential impacts of climate change on this precious natural resource. And whereas dedicated individuals and organizations have made significant contributions in developing, operating, and maintaining our water infrastructure and educating the public on the value of this resource. Now, therefore, I, Stephen M. Schul, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim May 2nd to 8th, 2021 as National Drinking Water Week in Durham, and hereby urge Durhamites to celebrate our staff that produces, manages, and maintains the city's water resources, and to help make Durham a more sustainable community by embracing water-wise habits. Witness my hand to the corporate seal of the City of Durham, North Carolina, this, the 3rd day of May, 2021. Stephen M. Schul, Mayor. And we have a special reception for this award, and this will be a video reception of the award. And I believe that Madam Clerk is going to tee up the video. here in just a minute.
Thank you, Mayor Schul and members of City Council. I'm Craig Hendershot, a Plant Operations Coordinator and a Surface Water Treatment Operator at the Brown Water Treatment Plant. It's an honor to be here today to accept this proclamation on behalf of my fellow operators in water supply and treatment and all employees of Durham's Department of Water Management. Producing clean, safe, healthy, and reliable drinking water is a 24/7 commitment, 365 days a year. I'm proud to be part of a team that ensures every one of our customers has access to one of the most basic human needs, clean and safe drinking water. It takes teamwork and dedication from our 350 plus department employees to fulfill that mission. Everyone from operators like me to maintenance technicians, engineers, laboratory and water efficiency analysts, all play key roles in making the magic happen. That magic keeps our award-winning Durham water flowing to your tap. 2020 was a challenging year across the globe that highlighted the vital role of water in all our lives. Hospitals and nursing homes need water. Fire departments need water. Schools need water. Industry needs water. We have to deliver safe, clean, and continuous water to the people of Durham. There's no other choice. Not only did we face a global pandemic in 2020, but the city of Durham had to deal with a malware attack in March. Thankfully, due to the protections built into our SCADA systems, the city's treatment plants were not affected by malware, and our frontline staff reported to work daily with all that was going on in the world to ensure that we continue to provide the essential services our customers expect. And going forward, our staff remains committed to treating, delivering, and protecting Durham's water. Thank you for taking time tonight to recognize the vital role safe drinking water plays in all our lives. We appreciate the support of City Council, City Administration, fellow city employees, and of course, the residents of Durham who make this community such a great city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hendershot. That was a great video. And I'm really appreciated, and we're grateful to all our folks in water management for the great job they're doing. And this proclamation discussed the need for investments in water infrastructure. And my colleagues know that we heard last week that in the next 10 years, we'll be investing about $1.1 billion in water and sewer infrastructure. So super important investments. Thank you, Mr. Hendershot. Job well done. The next proclamation that we have tonight, Councilmember Reese is going to do the honors, and this is for Better Hearing Month. And this will be presented to one of our local audiologists, Shelley, and I believe I saw in the chat that you pronounce your name Cristobal, but I'm not sure if that's correct. But she will be here to receive that, and I will turn the floor over to Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity to read this important proclamation about Better Hearing Month. Whereas audiologists in Durham, North Carolina observe and celebrate Better Hearing Month each year during the month of May. And whereas Durham City Council recognizes and values the efforts of all who work to eliminate or minimize the isolating effects of communication disorders in the 1 in 5 families affected by them. And whereas our citizens who have overcome communication disabilities through the services of audiologists are now able to lead independent, productive, and fulfilling lives. And whereas our veterans are returning from service with the main medical complaint of tinnitus and hearing loss as the second most common complaint, and audiologists are diagnosing and helping our veterans. And whereas Durham is proud and honored to have audiologists offering quality education and healthcare services to our residents. Now, therefore, I, Stephen M. Schul, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim May 2021 as Better Hearing Month in Durham, and hereby urge all residents to recognize the achievements of audiologists in improving the quality of life for people with communication disorders. Witness my hand in the corporate seal of the City of Durham, North Carolina, is 3rd of May, 2021. And now, if Ms. Cristobal, if you would like to say a few words, this would be a great time to do that.
Good evening, Mayor Schewel, Councilmember Reese, esteemed City Council members, and community neighbors. I want to begin by thanking you for recognizing May as Better Hearing Month and allowing me to speak with you today about hearing loss. My name is Dr. Shelley Cristobal, and I am a doctor of audiology at Hearing Healthcare Services in South Durham. I am also a fellow and scholar of the American Academy of Audiology. There's more information on Better Hearing Month there at www.howsyourhearing.org. I also work with advocacy with the North Carolina Academy of Audiology. For anyone who isn't familiar, audiologists are doctors who specialize in hearing, tinnitus, and balance disorders. Much like your optometrist or dentist, we specialize in the functions of the ear, keeping them healthy and keeping our patients connected to the world. Hearing loss is a major public health concern and is the third most common physical condition after arthritis and heart disease. It doesn't discriminate. No one is too healthy or too strong to avoid it. It is typically gradual and hard to detect in day-to-day life. Often individuals wait years before seeking help. Like vision loss is not just blindness, hearing loss comes on gradually and disrupts many parts of life. Because it is an invisible disability, it often goes ignored or avoided, written off as brain fog, disinterest, or normal aging. Did you know that 3 in 1,000 children in the US are born with hearing loss? And currently there are approximately 48 million Americans who report some degree of hearing difficulty. That's almost 15% of our population. For those over 65, that number jumps to over a third. Doing the math, 15% of our population, that's approximately 42,000 individuals just in Durham. What would you do if you learned 42,000 of your constituents were suffering from a debilitating health issue? I'm confident you'd want something done to help. Good news, there's already help available. Audiologists across the US recognize Better Hearing Month in May to promote and spread awareness about hearing loss and better hearing, and as you all are allowing me to do today. Again, I am Shelley Cristobal. I find I repeat myself a lot in my line of work. We are encouraging all individuals to have their hearing screened at age 50 and every 5 years after, sooner if there are any concerns. Individuals with diabetes, chronic illness, or family history of hearing loss are encouraged to have their hearing tested annually and followed by an audiologist. When you have trouble hearing, getting the right care and help can be life-changing. With adults and even more so with children, earlier detection means earlier treatment and better long-term outcomes and quality of life. North Carolina has incredible resources for those with hearing loss. Whether they utilize sign language or hearing technology, such as hearing aids or cochlear implants to hear, our local health systems provide world-class care and research for emerging hearing technology. And our state DHHS has many resources as a great source of support. Audiologists work in a wide variety of settings, and here in Durham, audiologists serve our community at the Veteran Affairs Hospital, at Duke and UNC Health Systems, and Durham Public Schools, and a variety of private practices like my own. We are excited for the Durham City Council to show your support for Better Hearing Month by coming to our offices for a hearing screening this month. Thank you again for your time. Better Hearing Month, and we look forward to seeing you in our clinics.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cristobal. We appreciate you being here, and thank you, Councilmember Reese. Colleagues, we have one more ceremonial item tonight that has come up in the interim the last few days, but I thought it was well worth celebrating. And I'm going to call on Councilmember Middleton to do the honors. You'll understand why in a minute. And I believe that I'm just checking the attendees here.
She's here, Mr. Mayor.
She is here. Great. All right, wonderful. And I believe already made available to speak. So, Councilmember Middleton, welcome for this special ceremonial item.
My thanks to you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to my fellow Avengers here on the council, and to all of our friends watching on whatever platform you may be watching tonight. Good evening and welcome. Today starts Teacher Appreciation Week. And this is particularly exciting for me because part of the team that raised me was a 30-year veteran of the New York City Public Schools, a special education teacher. So I had homework when I didn't have homework. So I want to honor the memory of my mom tonight, who was a great teacher who worked with my dad to insulate me from some things that certainly would not have had me here tonight had they gone their way. Everybody watching this broadcast tonight, if you do anything, if you've ever had any type of job, you should thank a teacher because you had to be taught to do something. And if human civilization is to not only endure but thrive, then perhaps the only indispensable profession is teaching. And I know that we want to celebrate Teacher Appreciation Week here in Durham because we are big on our teachers. And I couldn't think of a better person to help us celebrate Teacher Appreciation Week to receive our acknowledgement and thanks than the North Carolina Teacher of the Year. And I know a few things about her. I know that this is not just a job to her, it is a calling, it's ministry to her. And I know that she exemplifies those qualities that have her working long after the school day is over. I know these things about her because we go to church together. So I can say these things about her. And we are so excited and proud of our own Eugenia Floyd, who is the North Carolina Teacher of the Year. And we are excited about the state, and we believe ultimately the country finding out what we already know about her. So Durham Council, I want to introduce and present tonight the North Carolina Teacher of the Year to receive our thanks and acknowledgement for Teacher Appreciation Week, and to greet us and say you're welcome back to us in the city for appreciating our teachers. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Eugenia Floyd, the North Carolina Teacher of the Year.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. The city of Durham has always had a special place in my heart. The first job I ever had was as a hostess in a Durham restaurant. I look forward to working with the city of Durham to advocate and support the students and teachers of North Carolina. I would also like to thank the community partnerships, the Borough's Welcome Fund, Lenovo, Go Global NC, Bojangles, NC State Athletics, No Kid Hungry NC, and Flow Honda, because without them and communities like Durham, the work schools do would not be possible. So today is the first day of Teacher Appreciation Day. And if anyone chooses to appreciate teachers for the whole month or the rest of the year, I will speak on behalf of all of the educators in the state of North Carolina and the United States in saying we are okay with that. And thank you. But in all seriousness, thank you so much for allowing me to be here tonight. It's truly appreciated when the voices of educators, administrators, school staff, and the people who directly educate and care for children on a daily basis are acknowledged and heard. The pandemic has amplified and maybe even shouted over a loudspeaker the vital role that schools play in communities. The pandemic has shown that schools provide a level of service to communities that reaches far beyond just academic skills. So our work as educators evolved and continued during the pandemic because what's expected of our students didn't change. And yet and still, this is what we do. As educators, we rise to the occasion daily. We take all that we've been given and we provide the best level of instruction to our students. So thank you so much to the city of Durham in giving myself and my colleagues a moment to receive appreciation for our efforts in providing an education to the students of North Carolina. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Floyd. Thank you to Councilmember Middleton for bringing this to us tonight. Thanks to you for being the North Carolina Teacher of the Year. We're amazed and grateful to you and honored that you were here with us tonight. So thank you. And yeah, we'll all be thanking a teacher this week, this month, and all year long. So thank you. All right, colleagues, we will now move to announcements by the council. And I'll call on Councilmember Reese to begin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening again, colleagues. I know we've got a long meeting tonight, so I'm going to try to keep it short. But there were a couple of things I wanted to bring up. First of all, it is May, and May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and there are a ton of special events going on around the country and here in North Carolina to celebrate. One of them will be next Thursday, May 13th from 4 to 5 p.m. It'll be an event sponsored by North Carolina Asian Americans Together and the UNC Asian American Center, centered around Asian immigration stories and history. And I will have a chance to share some of my own family history of my mother and grandmother immigrating to the United States from Japan. Interestingly enough, I learned today that Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month is May, because that is believed to be the first month that Japanese immigrants came to the United States in 1843. So I thought that was interesting. Also, the month when they finished the Transcontinental Railroad, which was built in large part with Asian labor. So be on the lookout. I will share more information about those events on social media over the next couple of weeks. Unbelievably enough, it's also, May is also Bike Month here in the United States, and especially in Durham. We're doing a lot of celebrating of that. Bike Durham, our local cycling advocacy organization, kicked off Bike Month yesterday I guess it was Saturday, with a trail cleanup on Ellery Trail. And so a bunch of us went out and did that and got to talk a little bit. I got to ride someone's fancy folding bike, which was totally awesome. I don't have that kind of bike. I have a Schwinn, which is fine. And so there are going to be a lot of great events celebrating Bike Month. The one I want to highlight tonight is being put on by Go Triangle, actually. It is called Find the Right Bike for You. It's a webinar on May 6th at 2 p.m. Basically, it's a way to select the right bike for your body type, what you're going to be using it for, provide some information about safety gear and other organizations that can help. Lots of great folks will be on that webinar. So if you've been looking to get into cycling, that's a great way to do that. I'll be sharing information about that on social media as well. The next thing I wanted to say is congratulations to Deputy Chief Sherry Montgomery, who on June 11th, when Chief Davis moves on to her new job, Deputy Chief Montgomery will be appointed our interim police chief. I know all of us are going to wish her well and count on our partnership with her to continue to keep Durham safe. So congratulations, Deputy Chief Montgomery. The next thing I wanted to mention is about vaccine equity. As you're all aware, many folks here in Durham have been concerned about the widening disparity between different types of folks in Durham along racial and ethnic lines in terms of vaccination rates. And so a number of my colleagues have been involved in trying to create a plan to address those disparities. And we're going to get our first look at that and discuss it at our upcoming work session this Thursday. So wanted to just mention that and let folks know that the city of Durham is going to be in this fight to make sure that we get everyone vaccinated, no matter what you look like, where you live in the city, whatever your racial or ethnic background. We are going to find you and make sure you have the opportunity to get vaccinated, because that's the only way that we're going to emerge on the other side of this terrible pandemic. And last but not least, I wasn't going to say anything, but then he went and described me as his publicist in a national interview. So just had to point out that my friend and colleague, Pierce Freelon, released a new album on Friday, Black to the Future. At the same time, he had an interview in Billboard magazine, which is a great interview, actually, talked about his art, Afrofuturism, and talked about me as his unpaid publicist. So just wanted to mention that. And don't worry, as soon as the rest of y'all come out with a book or an album, I'll be right here publicizing it. So get to work. But congratulations, Pierce. That's amazing, given everything else you got going on in your life and in your work, that you're still dropping art like it's hot, which it is. So thank you, Mr. Mayor and colleagues. That's really all I had to say about that.
Thank you very much, Council Member, and congratulations to Council Member Freelon. It's awesome. All right, other announcements. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to talk a little bit about an exciting visit that we had to the city of Durham over the weekend. Mayor Schul and Manager Page and I had the honor of meeting John Legend, who is was here in town giving the commencement speech at Duke and asked to meet with a variety of folks in the area doing different kinds of justice work. John Legend, in addition to being an award-winning artist, musician, is also an activist and was very interested in the work that we're doing here in the city. He's also one of the major funders to Fuse Corps, which is a national nonprofit organization that is currently funding a number of staff here at the city to do work on our public safety transformation, racial equity, and equitable economic recovery from COVID. I believe the first 2 fellows started today, and there are 2 more who will be coming in July. So we had the opportunity to meet him through Fuse. The ED from Fuse was there, as well as several members of his philanthropy team. He has a whole team for that, which is pretty awesome. And he was just really interested in the work that we're doing. It's not often that you meet someone who has that high a profile who's also super interested in local government public policy. So it was just really exciting to talk to him, and we're really appreciative of for his support and for Fuse's support in bringing those fellows to Durham, and look forward to a long and productive relationship with the organization. He also followed me on Twitter. Little shout out to me. So yeah, I just was really excited and wanted to share. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. It was super cool. And we got to spend an hour and a half with him. He was a serious person, which was awesome. He is a serious person. All right, other announcements. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I love it when things go well for ordinary people. Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, thank you again, colleagues. And again, good evening to everyone. I want to thank my colleagues for their announcements thus far. Certainly want to add our well wishes and celebratory commendations, this being Asian American, Asian Pacific Islander Emphasis Month. So we certainly want to celebrate that. I do, Mr. Mayor, want to just very briefly talk about 2 things. One of them, I'm going to ask for some action from the council. The first one is just sharing. Last week was a particularly violent week in our city. The gunfire, of course, continues, and there are many that are concerned as the weather gets warmer and as we reopen as a nation, that things will we certainly don't hope for it, but we know what happens when you have a conflagration of or a conflation of warm weather, people being out of school, and now the country reopening after the pandemic. I'm concerned that there seems to be a tendency when it's been said that when America catches a cold, Black folk catch pneumonia. And as we're reopening the country, we know that there's still disparities, vaccine disparities. We're going to talk about that in the brown community, the Black community, but we're still getting back to normal. And I often fear that as we celebrate Google and Apple coming, that it's possible for us to literally live in 2 different cities. That is one city that continues to thrive and to be prosperous and to welcome new arrivals, and another city that, part of the city that continues to languish and continues to deal with persistent gun violence. I used to think that, one of 2 things could happen. I still think that one of 2 things could happen. Either one narrative could eclipse the other, and folk will stop wanting to come to Durham because things are so bad, or we'll bake the bad stuff into the cake. And as long as we have enough money and distance and fencing to isolate those 2 cities, that one will thrive and one will not. And I am deeply concerned that even as we celebrate the Durham that's on the pamphlet in the downtown Durham, that if we're not careful, we'll get into a business as usual kind of mode where that's just the way it is in their neighborhoods while the rest of us are flourishing. I want to, from time to time, share some of the messages I receive from residents and citizens. Tonight, I just want to briefly read a letter I got from a resident, and I'll share why after I read it. It says, "Good afternoon, Mr. Middleton. My name is Naisha Atkins. I'm a current resident of Durham, North Carolina, residing in Lakemore Apartments. If you don't know, we've experienced a recent shootings, and which led to a murder of a teenager. A woman was shot watching television in her home. I personally was on my way from work only by 5 minutes into my apartment when bullets were fired. I haven't slept since and was forced to decline a job offer because of the hours. I also canceled my gym membership at Planet Fitness because of safety. Not one person in power wants to assist those of us that actually care about our community. All of my concerns have been taken to the King, my father and provider. My question, could you please assist us in which direction we need to go? The line that stuck with me is when she said, not one person in power wants to assist those of us that actually care about our community, which isn't true. I know that every one of us want to help those that are in our community. But what also struck me is that she talked about organizing folk to address this issue of gun violence. And I just want to say to those of us that are already part of the activist class, those of us that already have organizational ties and have the wherewithal to do mass mailings and reach large amount of people with the press of a button, there's some stuff that Maisha shouldn't have to do. There's enough organizations, I think, that are already organized that whatever we're talking about, we should be adding the concerns of people like her to our ask list and to our agendas. Because, you know, respectfully, the headline in Durham is Black and brown people getting shot. That's the headline. That's what people are talking about in the streets. That's what folk are concerned about, at least where I hang out, and the folk that I talk to, and the folk that I listen to. And I just want to implore every organization, every group, every person with a platform, including the ones I'm cool with, including the ones I'm down with, to make sure we don't get caught up in our own echo chambers and exercise the luxury of choosing what we think the issue is. Because what I just read is the headline in Durham. That's the issue that people and families are concerned about. And whatever else we do, and there's some important things we need to do, and I'm down with them. It's important that we keep focus on the folk who every night are dealing with this issue, every night are dealing with gunfire, and now literally are asking for help, and they're seeking to organize around this issue. So my response to Ms. Atkins is that, of course, I'll help, and I know that all of us will, and everybody on this call, on this council, and many out there. But I just want to humbly say tonight that it's important that while we are engaged in our work and in our different silos, that we don't mistake our echo chamber for the real headline in our city. Our children are dying and jumping like soldiers, being trained like soldiers to duck and cover in bathtubs. That's the headline. That's what we've got to be focused on in Durham, with all of the other stuff. Because I know I'm not alone in not desiring and not wanting Durham to become two distinct cities. The one that welcomes Apple and Google, and the one that is burying teenagers who were killed in drive-bys, and we're giving them platitudes. And I include me in that. So I want to say that. My second announcement or ask, Mr. Mayor, tonight, and I was very thoughtful before bringing this up, but I think that we have crossed the threshold. I believe it's time for us as a council to take up and address the issue of the defund in front of the police department. I say this, and I really was thoughtful about this. This isn't about the merit or substantive issue of whether or not you agree with funding or defunding the police. I'm bracketing that out. I think there are three reasons why we need to take it up. One is fairness to our staff. It became evident to me after our city manager appeared at a town hall at Carolina Arbors last week. I got a bunch of messages and statements which are attributing some political things to our staff. And I believe they are errantly being placed on our staff. When we had that summer, that raucous, necessary summer in our country last year, when the encampment and those freedom fighters set up an encampment in front of the police headquarters, we adopted a policy basically of, excuse me, this isn't a good term, benign neglect. We weren't going to put them out. Benign neglect, just let it go and let it run its course. And I was complicit. It wasn't y'all, it was us. And eventually the freedom fighters removed themselves. The paint, of course, could not remove itself. And then we settled into this zone of basically just letting it be. It did not start on this manager's watch. Of course, this goes back to our previous city manager. But now we are hearing, we're getting, some of you have seen the emails from folk in the community, but there are other voices that I've heard from as well. So the first reason I think we should take it up is just fairness to our staff. I don't believe that we should, either through direct action or through our inaction, foist political calculus upon our staff. And the reason why I say it's political calculus is because under normal circumstances, any unapproved markings on our cityscape, we have an impact team from neighborhood improvement services. There are some things that would happen that we would not have to order as a city council. It didn't happen this time. And I believe the reason why it didn't happen is because it's fraught with political considerations. And our staff are very able to read the tea leaves. And that's a calculus that I think that our staff should not be engaged in, either directly by our action or by our inaction. So as a matter of fairness, I think we need to take the attention off the staff and put it where it belongs on us. The second reason why is an employee morale issue. I'm not talking about uniformed officers with guns and badges. I'm talking about civilian employees that I've heard from who work in the police department, who don't wear a gun, who don't wear a badge, who have literally asked me, do I need to be looking for a new job? Are y'all sending us a message? We're employers, and many of us on this conference call have been, either are or have been employers. And if you haven't been, you've been an employee, and you know the importance of working in a workplace that is not hostile or threatening. Again, I'm not talking about officers. I'm talking about folk that have contacted me who have heard some other things going on in the news and have literally said to me, are y'all getting ready to downsize us? Should I be looking for another job? I don't think they should have to speculate about that. I think that from an employee morale point of view, we need to take up this issue. Thirdly, from an institutional integrity point of view, I've already alluded to what would normally happen if we had unauthorized street art in our city, that there's a team that would go and do it. I think that it's important for us, and I'm haunted in a good way by something that my friend Councilor Reese brought up when we passed the non-discrimination ordinance. And he admonished us that if we pass it, then it's got to have teeth. We got to be prepared to respond to and deal with complaints that are made under that ordinance. I think that's right. And I think all of our ordinances and policies have to have teeth in order to maintain institutional integrity. I'm not so much bothered by the defund sign as I am by, in the future, if some group wants to put something anti-immigrant, homophobic, or racist, or if they're really creative, maybe all three at the same time on our street, and be able to point to our inactivity. And I wonder what grounds will we stand on to remove it if we find it particularly abhorrent relative to this. So for those three reasons, I'm officially, as a member of this council, asking tonight that we as a council either take up this issue, and if we believe through debate and through discussion that this is truly reflective of our city's values, if it captures where we are and who we are now, then we should put our name on it. We should own it and take it off of our staff and put the direction of the consideration where it needs to be. If we decide not to take it up, then I think we have crossed the threshold. I think that either staff or our city attorney should tell us either on what policy or ordinance we can rest upon not to have it dealt with. What is our staff? What is our staff appealing to not to do it? Whatever the outcome of the discussion, I think we should have a governance not based on inertia. I think that we should, as issues come, however tough they are, we should look at them, we should debate them, we should vote, and then we should hug it out afterwards, or give virtual high fives afterwards, and a la West Wing, ask what's next. But I think we have crossed the threshold from an employee morale point of view, from a fairness to our staff point of view, and from an institutional integrity point of view, that we need to take up this issue. If we want to say that this is who we are as Durham, then we have to earn it. We have to do the work. Our friends in DC with Mayor Keisha, no, not Keisha, too many brilliant Black women to keep up with, Mayor Muriel Bowser in DC, and our colleagues on the council, that Black Lives Matter Plaza, they acted and they codified that. Our friends in Fayetteville, Mayor Colvin and our colleagues on the council at the Market House, that Black Lives Matter mural, the council codified it and said, yes, this comports with our values. I think now that we have to do the same. We either have to own it as a council and say that this is street art that we're approving, or I need to know how legally or through ordinance we cannot not only allow our staff, but direct our staff to engage in regular order for the protection of the institutional integrity of the city and of this government. I'm prepared to have the discussion, but I think that we can't be silent about it anymore because our employees are asking questions, our residents and citizens are asking questions, and our staff is now bearing the brunt of critiques that are political in nature and that don't belong there. This is what we got elected for. The buck stops with us. So I'm calling tonight for us to either take up the issue or explain why legally it's okay for us not to order the staff to engage in regular order as they would with anything else in the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, council member. I'll discuss with our manager setting a time for that discussion in the near future. Thank you. Any further announcements? All right, thank you, colleagues. We'll now move to priority items by our city manager. Welcome, Madam Manager.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the Durham City Council. I have 2 priority items for you this evening. Agenda item number 9, construction manager at risk, guaranteed maximum price for the Mist Lake Dam reconstruction amendment number 6 for Gilbane Building Company. Attachment number 2 was updated. Agenda item number 22, zoning map change, CASA North Duke. The title was updated. Those are all of the priority items I have for you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Manager. Madam Attorney, any priority items tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. It's good to see you all. The City Attorney's Office has no priority items this evening.
Thank you very much, Madam Attorney. Madam Clerk, any priority items tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. The City Clerk's Office has no priority items this evening.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, we'll now move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda can be approved by a single vote of the council. That is, consists of items that the council has previously worked on. Members of the public or members of the council can pull an item from the consent agenda, and those items will be heard at the conclusion of the meeting. Consent agenda, item 1, approval of city council minutes. Item 2, Mayor's Hispanic Latino Committee appointment. Item 3, Green and Equitable Infrastructure Project. Item 4, City County Planning Department FY22 Work Program. Item 5, approval of the draft FY21-22 Annual Action Plan. Item 6, conveyance of 702, 704, and 917 Grant Street to Durham Community Land Trustees for the purpose of affordable housing development. I'm going to pull item 6 at the request of a resident. Item 7, capital improvement project CIP ordinance amendment and contract for signal timing services for the Durham computerized signal system. Item 8, proposed water and sewer rates for FY21-22. Item 9, construction manager at risk, guaranteed maximum price for Mist Lake Dam reconstruction amendment number 6 for Gilbane Building Company. Item 10, Mist Lake facility expansion amendment number 1 to construction material testing in contract with Falcon Engineering Incorporated. Item 11, residential backflow prevention assembly testing and repair, award of service contract to Acme Services of Durham Incorporated. Item 12, residential backflow prevention assembly testing and repair, award of service contract to Waterworks Services Incorporated. Item 13, resolution authorizing the virtual city auction. Item 14, cooperative group purchase contract 3 international trucks. Item 15, contract ST318C inspections for construction projects. Item 17, amendment to contract with Powerhouse Recycling, Inc. for recycling services for electronic equipment. You have heard the consent agenda, and with the exception of item 6, I would like to have a motion for the approval of that consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Reese, and was there a second?
Yes, that was me. Second.
Councilmember Freelon, thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero, Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, normally we hold the pulled consent agenda items until the end of the meeting, but I understand that we have one speaker who wants to speak briefly to this item, and so that our staff doesn't have to stay until the end of the meeting for this agenda item, we will go ahead and do that now. I believe, Madam Clerk, that Mr. Ajax Woolley is here and has a video of a speaker on this item. Mr. Woolley, are you available?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
I think we also had Pastor Lucas from the neighborhood here. I'm not sure if he was able to be recognized.
Yes, I see Pastor Lucas. We can ask him later if he would like to speak. Go ahead, Mr. Woolley.
Would we also be able to share our screen?
Yes.
I don't believe I have.
The clerk will give you permission.
Okay, here we go.
Good evening. My name is Vivian Dolores Gunn, and I am a member of the Grant Street community. We would like to thank you for letting us make this presentation. To begin with, we would like to thank retired manager Tom Bonfield for keeping his promise to donate properties to the Grant Street community for affordable housing. This is only the first step in mending our community after the devastation of homes and properties resulting from the 1960s urban renewal project. Also, it has been over 20 years since the Fayetteville Street project was demolished. Today, we are still fighting for the redevelopment of the 21-acre eyesore of land formerly known as Fayetteville Street, aka Fayette Place. We would like for this area to become a vital part of our community. There is debris and trash that litters the streets, large concrete slabs that once were apartment buildings laying bare, as well as a haven for wildlife that has been observed on this property. Additionally, it's a meeting place for prostitutes, drugs, and other illegal activities. It appears that the only time this area is cleaned is when the Durham Housing Authority becomes aware of special meetings and walks that have been planned in our community. Our desire as taxpayers is to reside in an area that is comparable to and the standards of other proud working families. Thank you.
Mr. Woolley, thank you. Can you take your screen down? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for bringing Ms. Gunn to us. Pastor Lucas is also with us. Pastor Lucas, if you, I see that you've also, it says item 6 by your name as well. Could, Madam Clerk, could you make William Lucas available to be heard, please? Pastor Lucas, are you with us tonight?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor.
Good to have you, Pastor, and we'd like to hear from you if you'd like to talk to us. And you also have 3 minutes. Thanks for being here.
I knew you threw that 3 minutes in there because I'm a preacher, but I'm not. I can stay within it. I'm gonna do 2.5 just because you said 3 minutes. but good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. It's so good to see everyone this evening, and I've enjoyed just listening to the conversations. I'm going to make this really quick. First, I would like to say thank you. And I'm here on behalf of Durham Can and the Hayti community. And I just want to thank you for what you've already done. There's a Chinese proverb that says 1,000-mile journey starts with 1 step. I think these 3 properties are 1 step. It's a good step. And it's a step, in the right direction. I'm here representing so many people. I think about the late Skippy Scarborough and conversations we had. I think about conversations with Mr. Edmonds, the Carolina Times, who lived adjacent to Fayetteville Street projects. And he told me, please make sure they put something nice there. So many people who have gone on to glory, who never saw this property develop. And Durham Can, who has worked tirelessly for years. But I want to, as I bring this sermon to a close, I just want to bring up one person really quickly to give you a little history. There's a person that I studied and continue to study his life's works. Our church is built based model after him. He was an early 1910, 1920 New Yorker, and his name was Marcus Garvey. He had a mission and a purpose for the African American community. And this was his message to America way back then. He said, African Americans in this country have served in every war since the War of Independence. We fought and we did it with dignity and respect. He said that we've given our lives for this country and we've gotten very little in return. He talked about how the African American community is in a pot, and that pot is boiling. He said, I don't understand why we don't have a civil war in the Black community right now, with the way that lynchings were going on at that time and the way that individuals were being treated. Well, fast forward 100 years now, that pot is not boiling anymore. That pot is boiling over. This is not, we're not coming begging the city council tonight. We're coming to try to illuminate and warn and prophesy to the city council tonight. If we do not do something as a community, as a city, like Councilman Milton said earlier, we're not gonna have a Google or a safe place anywhere. Because at this point, it's gotten so bad that the whole country is a tinderbox. And at this time, we can't have a negligent action and zone this community. I was on Fayetteville Street at South Point, the same street, Fayetteville Street, South Point today. And I almost had tears as I rode back toward our church. And I saw the difference between individuals sitting out in their communities, relaxing, not worrying about crime or anything. And then I get down by our church and this area where this property is, and I see total devastation. So thank you for the good start. I think that 1,000-mile journey has started, and I hope and pray that we will continue in this positive vein.
Thank you, Pastor Lucas. I assure you, I only give everybody 3 minutes. It's not just you or your profession. But we're really glad to have you here tonight. Thank you so much. Colleagues, we'll now take up this item, the conveyance of 702, 704, and 917 Grant Street to Durham Community Land Trustees for the purpose of affordable housing development. And I'll accept a motion for the passage of this item. Councilmember Freeman?
I just had a few comments. I didn't know if you wanted to have the motion.
Go ahead. Go ahead, sure.
But I'm reminded constantly about how things operate with council, and I'm mindful of the comments that Councilmember Middleton made, and then also what Pastor Lucas is sharing. And then just noting that, you know, as a Ward 1 representative with Fayetteville Street in my ward, it specifically calls out a lack in a way that I've not been able to reconcile with. Just noting that that tale of two cities that Councilmember Middleton noted is also laced with the fact that folks are afraid that they're going to be pushed out of the city. And I want to just take a moment and just note that the president just gave a great State of the Union and noted how we have an opportunity right now to invest in our future. You know, the opportunity of a generation, I believe is the way he stated it, but it's really going to be incumbent upon us to figure out how to support the solutions that community members have been coming up with to actually address those root causes we talk about. And so I know that there have been conversations around doing a development there at Fayetteville Street. I know there's been conversations around additional affordable housing opportunities. And I also know that the pushback or the kind of negativity that folks have received around some of the projects that they put forward feel like they're race-based. And I don't know how to address it in a way that makes it non-race-based. But I do want to say that I think we all received a letter from a group of folks in the community who asked us if we would be willing to earmark funds for American Rescue, specifically for Black businesses and Black development and Black work that needs to be done. And I think that this speaks specifically to how we can do some reparative work, acknowledging that some of the things that have come forward for people who are not of color in this city have come forward out of policy that was driven from maybe just request. I know there was an example someone shared around the Durham Women's Association requesting the tree canopies in all neighborhoods, but the 6 Black neighborhoods, and how following that in the 1930s, there was this kind of cascade of concerns or issues that arise because the use of the way that the communities were landscaped created the appraisal values for the communities themselves. And so the devaluing of those 6 Black neighborhoods occurred on the watch of the city. And so I want to figure out what it looks like for us to really come up with a restitution plan in the same similar sense that Pastor Lucas was kind of leaning into. Just noting that, I mean, we were talking about, I think this evening, you see the infrastructure and green infrastructure and equity bond. And I know we're talking about waiting until next year, but I'm hoping that in the time that we'll spend over the next few months or however long to come up with a plan around it, that it really includes a race-based solution, not just by neighborhood, but really based on race. I know that what I'm also reminded of is the work of folks like C.P. Ellis and Ann Atwater, and how this is the time right now where we are to really dig in and do this work together in a way that's not divisive, that's not about one community or the other, but how we all kind of reach back and figure out how to level the playing field in a way that raises up more of those who are at the margins. And I'm hopeful that our council will have more discussion about this, because I don't think that we all hear it in the same way. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. All right, colleagues. Can I have a motion for the approval of item 6?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Councilmember Freeman, seconded by Councilmember Freelon. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero?
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. We'll now move to our general business agenda. Item 16, utility extension agreement with Chartered Development Company, L.L.C. to serve National Heritage Academies, NHA Oak Grove Charter School. Madam Clerk, I'm sorry. I didn't mean Madam Clerk. I'm not sure the staff here tonight who will be beginning this item for us. Is there staff that is taking up this item with us? I don't see anyone. So yes, I do. I see Mr. O'Toole.
Mayor Schul, I'm not the staff person that moved this forward. I believe Rob Joyner is the staff person that did that, but I worked with Rob on this item and can help if there's no one here from Public Works who can answer questions.
I see that Mr. Joyner is here as well. Thank you, Mr. O'Toole. Mr. Joyner, welcome. Would you like to introduce this item for us, please?
Yes, I apologize. I was having a few technical difficulties.
No problem. We understand, believe me.
So essentially what you have before you here is a water and sewer extension agreement with National Heritage Academies Oak Grove Charter School. And this is a request for utilities extension from Mr. Bob Dunstan of Charter Development Company, L.L.C. And the purpose of this agreement is to provide water and sewer service for two parcels, roughly 12.37 acres, located at 2201 East Gear Street and 2523 East Club Boulevard. And these parcels are located in Durham County outside the Durham city corporate limits. The applicant is requesting service for a K-8 school that will serve approximately 772 students without annexation. The applicant is requesting City Council approve this utility extension agreement to provide water and sewer service without annexation into the city. Previously, this project was brought before City Council at a November 2nd, 2020 meeting as a consolidated annexation, initial zoning, and utility extension agreement application. At that meeting, the consolidated item was denied by Council, and the applicant has now come back and submitted an application for a utility extension agreement only without a voluntary annexation application. Under the code 70-129, which has been included with your packet as an attachment, City Council may approve or disapprove water mains, sewer mains, water service connections, or sewer service connections, i.e. utility service, in its discretion to property outside the city's corporate limits petitioning for such service upon the conditions established by this section. The city water distribution system sewage collection shall not be extended beyond the limits of the city or without voluntary annexation into the city, except under Code 70-129, which identifies 9 exceptions. And the code attached provides those list of exceptions. This application does not appear to fall with any of the 9 exceptions contained within Code 70-129. And this information was also verified with the applicant. And there has been no documentation provided that it does fall within any of these exceptions. Based upon that, staff has recommended that this utility extension agreement application be denied. I'm available for any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joyner. Appreciate it. This is not a public hearing item, but there is a resident here tonight who would like to be heard on this item, Mr. Bill Bryan. Mr. Bryan, welcome. Can you be heard?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. We can, Mr. Bryan.
Mayor Schul, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, and members of the council, my name is Bill Bryan, and I am an attorney with the Morningstar Law Group at 112 West Main Street, Durham. Along with Neil Gosh, I represent the applicant requesting the city enter into a utility extension agreement to extend water and sewer to the property located at 2201 and 2523 East Club Boulevard. Our client intends to develop the property as a public charter school. This is the same property that you declined to annex last November, and as a result, you never acted on the UEA request that accompanied our client's annexation petition because the approval of that petition was a condition of the UEA. The basis for our request tonight is stated in the letter that I sent you on Friday afternoon. In summary, it will not be possible for our client to develop this property unless the city agrees to allow us to extend city water and sewer to the site. The staff recommended denial of this request because it does not comply with the city policy on extension of utilities outside the city limits. But that policy is intended to require annexation as a condition for the extension of utilities. And in this case, the city council already has stated that it does not want to annex this property. Therefore, the council has in essence determined that the policy does not apply to this request tonight. Although the staff told us that it preferred not to include the proffers of road improvements that were included in the UEA we proposed, we petitioned for annexation, we still are willing to make those improvements and have submitted an alternative version of the agreement which includes them. Those improvements will be worth more than $1 million to the city. If this request is not approved, the council will leave our client with no option other than to take legal action against the city. Worse than that, however, the council will have acted in a manner which seems irrational. If the council prevents our client from building its public charter school, it will have reduced the number of public educational opportunities available to students in Northeast Durham. This is the opposite of what the council says is its goal. The council also will have turned down a road which leads only to the creation of legal precedent that will hurt the anti-charter school movement in North Carolina, which the council says that it supports. Council's action will make this particular school, a martyr to the charter school cause around which pro-charter school forces will gather, and in response to which legislative action which both supports public charter schools and further curtails the power of cities and counties over them likely will be taken. Therefore, the result of the council's decision will be to undermine the anti-charter school cause that it says it supports. Surely the short-term satisfaction the council will gain from temporarily stopping this one public charter school is not worth the greater harm to the anti-charter school movement that will result from the decision. And of course, denying this request also will be saying no to over $1 million worth of road improvements that our client is willing to make at a time when getting private entities to build needed public infrastructure is a budgetary priority. And I would add to this, that this is in an area of the city that everybody is talking about targeting as needing greater infrastructure and improvements for the people who live there. Accordingly, there is no good reason for the council to deny this request, and we therefore respectfully request and ask that the council approve our client's UEA request either with or without the proffered road improvements. We appreciate the opportunity to address you on this matter, and we are available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bryan. All right, colleagues, you've heard Mr. Bryan, you've heard from staff. And as I say, this is not a public hearing item. We don't have any of the formalities that go along with public hearings. If the any motion on this item would have to be made in the affirmative, although staff is recommending that we do not support the motion because that what is being requested does not meet any of the requirements of the code. All right, Councilmember Reese.
Mr. Mayor, in that case, am I correct in that the motion that we are asked to make tonight upon the advice of council is a motion to authorize the city manager to enter into a utility extension agreement? And
That's
then
correct.
if there is a second, the council can then vote to support or reject that motion. Is that right?
That's correct.
Great. In that case, I'll move to authorize the city manager to enter into a utility extension agreement with Charter Development Company, L.L.C. to serve National Heritage Academies, Oak Grove School.
Mayor, point of order.
Second.
Councilmember Middleton, sure.
Are we not entertaining discussion or?
Yeah, we'll have discussion after the motion.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
absolutely. Yeah. Thank
Second.
you. Okay, motion by Councilmember Reese, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, and now we'll have discussion. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remember the vote when we denied the annexation, and I want to say to Mr. Bryan that I actually thought that the argument that we kind of created the conditions that would not allow your client to meet one of the 9 exemptions was somewhat compelling. Secondly, what I thought of is you know, under Geneva Conventions, if an army in the field takes a prisoner, they are absolutely obligated to feed that prisoner and take care of them. I don't believe water and food should be a weapon in any fight. However, I don't really like to be threatened, and I've never been in a debate or a situation where I found that to be a useful tactic. I thought that you know, you are absolutely free to do whatever it is you're legally available to do, but I don't think that this particular council is going to be swayed by the specter of legal action against us or not. I think this council has demonstrated they're not afraid of lawsuits, and you know, we're going to govern according to the merits of what's before us. So I would just respectfully say that while I was mulling the notion that water and food are just off limits, you know, whatever philosophical arguments that we can come up with against an issue or for an issue are fine, but there are some things that for me personally that's off limits, and water and food are those. However, I don't particularly take kindly just to kind of the feeling of being threatened. You know, where I grew up in a neighborhood where don't talk about it, just be about it. If you're going to do it, do it. But the tethering of our decision to the specter of possibly being having legal action taken against us is just off-putting to me, and I don't think it's helpful to your client. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Member. Other discussion, colleagues? All right, seeing none. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Schul,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
No.
Councilmember Caballero,
No.
Councilmember Freelon,
No.
Councilmember Freeman,
No.
Councilmember Middleton,
No.
Councilmember Reese.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The noes have it. The motion fails. Mr. Bryan, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues, we'll now move to our public hearing items. Item 20 is the first one, the consolidated annexation of Olive Branch Reserve. I'll remind the council that this item is one that we had taken up previously, I believe on March the 15th. I may have that date wrong, but around then. And we kept this hearing open, if you all remember, because there were some unresolved issues that we asked the developer and the planning staff to come back to us. And that's where we are. And so I think I will now turn it over to the appropriate planning staffer. And that's Mr. Culture. Welcome, Mr. Culture.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Schul, Madam Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, City Council members, Danny Culture with the Planning Department. First thing I would like to do is state for the record that all Planning Department hearing items have been advertised and noticed in accordance with the state and local law, and the affidavits and of all those notices are on file in the Planning Department. The request for voluntary annexation, I'll do a quick overview in case for some people in the audience that are unfamiliar with this case. The request for the voluntary annexation, utility extension agreement, future land use map change, and zoning map change was received from 10 Cybers of Horvath and Associates for 113.579 acres located at 1607 Olive Branch Road and 802 and 830 Virgil Road. The site is zoned residential rural and Falls Jordan Lake Watershed Protection Overlay District B, and is located in the suburban development tier. The applicant's proposing to rezone the property to planned development residential 3.220 for up to 350 single family and townhouse residential dwelling units. The property is currently designated very low density residential on the future land use map. The proposed PDR 3.220 zoning is inconsistent with the designated future land use, but if the proposed zoning is approved, the future land use map will be redesignated to low density residential to ensure consistency. This change doesn't require a separate motion and would take can effect concurrently with other approvals, which would be effective as of March 31st, 2021. The Planning Commission voted 0 to 13 at their November 10th, 2020 meeting to recommend denial of the request. And you're correct, this item did come before you on March 15th, 2021, in which time you voted for continuance to tonight's meeting to give the applicant an opportunity to address several concerns raised. The applicant has made some modifications, and the changes are highlighted on the updated development plan and also called out in the staff report. There are 3 motions required for the application. The first is to adopt an ordinance annexing Olive Branch Reserve into the city of Durham and enter into a utility extension agreement with MF Development L.L.C. The second is to adopt an ordinance for the rezoning and amend the future land use map. And the third is to adopt a consistency statement, excuse me. Thank you very much, and staff and the applicant team would be available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cultra. Colleagues, you have heard the report from staff, and this public hearing is already open. But I'm going to first, before we hear from members of the public who've signed up to speak, ask if there are any questions for staff, members of the council. I have some, and I think I'll go ahead and just start with mine, Mr. Cultra. This was continued for the March 15th meeting. There have been additional proffers and changes in the development plan proposed since that meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct. And
could you identify for us what those additional proffers are?
I will pull those up. The applicant actually added some and modified some of the text commitments. Let me pull those up and I'll read those off to you. Text commitment number 1, they proposed modified the commitment to provide a minimum of 50% townhouse units and a minimum of 20% single family detached units.
And what was that previously, Mr. Cultra?
I think it was just a mix of each 20% units. So they upped the ratio of to 50% townhouse units.
Thank you.
On number 4, they changed the commitment to a minimum of 4 of the following items shall be provided at the time of site plan with structures, dog parks, tot lot, pool, disc golf, soccer playfield, nature trails, community gardens, and greenhouse. These are some items that they added for the open space.
Okay.
And number 11, they modified based on some of the concerns with the natural heritage area for the corridor. They are proffering to developer shall construct a paved greenway trail subject to the terms stated in Real Estate Book 1503, page 898 and 899 to dedicate a 30-foot wide greenway trail easement to the city of Durham. Therefore, the digital data for the easement shall be provided to the Parks and Rec Department of the city of Durham. Additionally, the developer shall provide a parking lot and a minimum of 5 spaces for public access to the greenway trail and a pocket park area with a minimum of 2 benches and then 2 picnic tables adjacent to the parking lot. So the change of this one is they're going to provide public access to the greenway trail within their development with a parking lot and a pocket park available for public access. And the other one is on number 13. They also made some changes based on concerns for the wildlife corridor. They are removing some of the other open space and other measures. So the uses permitted inside the wildlife corridor is illustrated on sheet D100, including infrastructure and passive recreation amenities. Stormwater controls measures shall not be located within the wildlife corridor except for the treatment of the impervious area along the stream crossing. So they will only be proposing treatment for anything that has to be treated for the actual stream crossing itself.
Thank you, Mr. Cultra. As I understand it, the stream crossing is the collector street?
That would be the collector street, and let me pull that up again so I can make sure. Yes, that would be the future collector road. And I believe previously they had shown a possible utility crossing, but they revised that to show the utility crossing to be placed within the collector street as well.
And that was my understanding as when I read that. Thank you. And I'll and then the other infrastructure within the 300-foot buff within the wildlife corridor, what would that other infrastructure consist of?
Let me pull that back up on that. They've just they have not defined that. I would have to allow the applicant to define that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cultra. I'll ask the applicant in a minute then. Thank you. So, but the stormwater treatment that had previously been scheduled to be in the wildlife corridor is no longer in the wildlife corridor, except for treating anything relevant to the road that crossing the wildlife.
That's correct. That commitment has been modified to address that.
And the utility that was going to cross will now cross with the road. It'll be the same crossing.
With the roadway. Yeah.
And
that other crossing was removed from the
okay. And the all right. Another item, and I don't know, Mr. Cultra, if you know the answer to this, or if we'll need to hear from the applicants of this, is around the grave sites. You'll remember we had an extensive discussion of that. The applicant said that the grave site removal of the grave site was supported by the family. We had some discussion about that further. Do you have any more information from your standpoint on that, or do we need to hear from the applicant?
We would need to hear from the applicant. I have not got any further clarification on that.
All right. In the planning staff summary, attachment 9, it says that and this was I guess the original attachment that was created prior to the planning commission meeting, that it says that they are not meeting the 300-foot buffer required in the East Durham open space plan. Have they corrected that, or I'll use that term, corrected. I believe corrected is the right word. Rectified that with the new proffer?
Yes, Mayor Schul, that was corrected. They did correct that and actually illustrate the whole corridor to be 300 foot. On the southern portion of the stream channel, and on the northern portion, they are only their property actually only includes one side of the stream channel, so they have the 300-foot corridor on their side of that.
I remember that from the map, right? Thank you. So, but all 300 feet of the corridor will be there, but it'll all be on their side of the property line.
On the northern portion, on the southern portion, they have the entire stream, 300 feet on both sides of the stream corridor.
Okay, I see what you're saying. All right, thank you. On page 8 of attachment 9, it discusses the transportation infrastructure and says that these and other improvements, while being made piecemeal, are going to overall improve the transportation network and traffic flow in this area. I wondered, I don't think this is a question so much for you, Mr. Cultra, but perhaps if Mr. Judge or someone else from transportation is here, they could speak to that. I think that's an important assertion, and I think it's something we hear a lot about. Mr. Judge, can you offer some thoughts on that?
Yes, as Bill Judge, City of Durham Transportation, as we've discussed before, the developer will be making improvements along their site frontage along Olive Branch. There's not a extensive amount of frontage in the grand scheme of Olive Branch. So we wanted to acknowledge that, but they are also making off-site roadway improvements at some of the nearby intersections, turn lanes, signalization to address site traffic impacts, and we'll be providing turn lanes as well as a portion of the collector street through their site between Olive Branch and Virgil Road.
So is it true in your judgment that these improvements and other improvements that are made piecemeal as we approve other developments are going to overall improve the transportation network and traffic flow in this area?
So there'll be minor improvements. I mean, generally the improvements that developers are making are, for the most part, addressing their impacts. There still will be isolated properties that may or may not develop where the city or the state will have to eventually come back and make those improvements in order to get the larger improvements needed for the area. But...
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Judge. And one other question, Mr. Judge. The collector street that goes through the riparian riparian border and or corridor and the wildlife corridor is on a Wake Durham collector street plan. Is that correct?
Yes, it's from the Wake Durham collector street plan, which was adopted around 2000 or so, where the environmental screening when they went in and selected that was not nearly as rigorous as the standards for today. So we'll have to work with the applicant to try to minimize the impact of that crossing.
That crossing, and what is a collector street?
The collector street is generally intended to provide a single lane of travel in each direction, depending on if there's frontages or intersections. May have a third lane for turn lanes, but it would have sidewalks on both sides as well as bicycle accommodations, either wide 10-foot trails on each side or on-road bicycle lanes.
And to minimize, and so to work with them to minimize you mean to work with them to minimize the negative effect potentially on the wildlife corridor? Correct.
So, I mean, we would not need, obviously, through the wildlife corridor, I think it's 600 feet wide. We could narrow down the road to 2 11-foot lanes at that, plus the sidewalks or bicycle lanes, rather than carry through parking or turn lanes or other such things.
Thank you very much, Mr. Judge. And thank you, Mr. Cultra. Mr. Sivers, when it's your turn, you heard some of my questions and some of the things that when you're up, it'd be great if I could hear you address some of those. But now I'll ask my colleagues for any questions that you may have for staff. Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Cultra. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us again on this case. I either missed it or you said the applicant was going to have to answer it. So let me try to get at this another way. Text Amendment 13 says uses permitted inside the wildlife corridor as illustrated on sheet D100 include infrastructure and passive recreation amenities. What are passive recreation amenities within the context of Text Amendment 13?
I can address that per the ordinance, and let me pull that section of the ordinance up for you. For private open space, an applicant has to meet a certain amount of open space for any type of residential development. So 1/3 of all of the open space has to be put into a recreational component. So the passive open space can be vegetation. It can be, let me pull up some of the definitions of what that can be. So other open space can be agricultural, horticultural, it can be natural vegetation. It can be tree coverage, project boundary buffers, inventory sites. It can be stormwater management, but in this case, they've already proffered that it won't be stormwater management except for the minimum stormwater management to actually control for the roadway crossing. One passive recreational component that can be put in that is a or passive open space that could be a recreational component could be something like a trail, which the Greenway is something that's required for them to actually implement.
So the Greenway Trail they're going to build is inside the wildlife corridor?
That is correct. And the East Durham Open Space Plan recognizes greenways within the wildlife corridors.
That was my question. Thank you, Mr. Coulter. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Council Member. Colleagues, any questions, any more questions at this point for staff? All right, we will now hear from the people who are here to speak on this item. I see a number of people are signed up to speak on this item. Mr. Sivers, are you speaking on behalf of your team?
Good evening, Mayor Schul. Neil Goosh will be speaking on our members of our team, and there are also some neighbors that are signed up to speak as well that are proponents of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Sivers. Mr. Goosh, are you available to be heard?
I think I am now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Let me ask you first a question.
Sure.
That has nothing to do with this case.
Okay.
I heard Mr. Bryan pronouncing your name. I was worried that over the last decade or so, I'd been mispronouncing your name. How do you pronounce your last name?
Goosh.
Okay, good. I've got it right. Thanks.
You do. You do, in fact. Yes.
All right, good. Thank you. Mr. Goosh, who are the members of your team that are here tonight? I see a number of people signed up to speak, and I just want to make sure that we give the opponents and proponents the appropriate recognition.
Sure. So Mr. Michael Foley and Tim and myself have a short presentation. We submitted a PowerPoint. It'll, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 minutes, something like that. And those are the ones who are officially on the team. I'm aware of a couple of neighbors who intended to speak in favor. I don't know if they're here. Sounds like maybe they are.
All right, thank you. So on the team are you, Mr. Sivers, and Mr. Wan, is that correct?
Well, yes, he's on the team as well, and so is Mr. Michael Foley.
All right. And so, okay. So, and who is the third speaker besides yourself and Mr. Sivers?
Michael Foley.
Michael Foley, gotcha.
Yep.
All right.
And actually, he'll be leading off.
All right. So we have some other members here. There are other people here who would like to speak on item 20. And I am going to just ask them, I'm going to ask them individually. Okay, I see that the city, yeah, okay. So, yeah, I'm going to just ask Madam Clerk, if you could make Trip Nelson, Susan Boisseau, Kevin Curtin, and Susan Dees available to be heard, and Trip Nelson. You could make them available to be heard, Madam Clerk. Great. I'm going to begin friends, this is not a procedure you're familiar with, but I have to ask you whether or not you're a proponent or opponent of this project so that we can fairly allot time. So I'll start with Mr. Nelson here at the top of my list. Mr. Nelson, are you here to speak on this item?
Mr. Mayor, yes, sir, but I'm going to defer to my Aunt Susan Dees.
Okay.
In respect for your time this evening. So she'll speak on behalf of the family.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Ms. Dees, are you here?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. And are you a proponent or opponent of this?
A proponent.
All right. Thank you. We will get to you in a little bit.
Great.
Thank you. Kevin Curtin, are you also available to be heard?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Curtin, thank you for being here. Are you a proponent or opponent of this?
I'm a proponent.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Foley is on the team. Ms. Boyso, are you here?
I am.
Thank you. Ms. Boyso, are you a proponent or opponent of this project?
I am a proponent.
Thank you. And I believe that I have covered everyone. Is there anyone else on the list of attendees who would like to be heard on item 20? And if so, could you please raise your virtual hand or make yourself known in the chat if I've missed you? All right, I don't think that I've missed anyone. Again, friends, thank you for, we have lots of rules around these public hearings, and when we do it virtually, it takes a little sort of calling of attendance. So I appreciate your patience. I don't see any opponents who are here to speak tonight, only proponents. So Mr. Ghosh, why don't you start, and then we will follow up with the other people who have signed up.
Sure. Actually, I'm going to have Mr. Michael Foley lead off for us if he is available.
That's fine.
I am available. And Danny, can you pull up the PowerPoint?
Certainly. Give me just 1 second. I'll do that for you.
And if I could ask other people who are going to speak a little later, just please mute yourself so we can make sure we can hear Mr. Foley.
Great.
Is that visible now?
Yes. Thank you. So good evening, Mayor Schul, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, and fellow council members. My name is Michael Foley. I'm with MF Development, LLC, and I am the applicant on this project. And I wanted to start out talking about kind of giving a background on the May Family Cemetery, which is located within the project. First, I want to say that the property has not been under the May family's ownership since 1920. Secondly, pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 65-106, which governs the relocation of cemeteries, our consultant, Legacy Research, prepared a family history report, conducted a field investigation, and sent letters to the 27 descendants that we identified, notifying them of the intent to relocate the graves to the Maplewood Cemetery in Durham. We also posted in the newspaper, and basically we got 6 responses back from the family members who all wanted to be present during the relocation. Subsequently, we received approval for the relocation application from the Durham Board of County Commissioners on March 22nd. However, having done all this work, based on feedback from the Planning Commission, City Council, and follow-up conversations with the family members, we've decided not to go ahead and relocate the cemetery, and instead we'll design the project around it. And basically, after a lot of consideration, this just seemed to be the best course of action to take. Next slide.
And thanks, Mike, for leading off. Members of the council, I wanted to take some time. Oh, this is Neil Ghosh, by the way, with the Morningstar Law Group. I want to take some time to highlight the changes we've made to the project after having heard feedback from you all and from the Planning Commission and from some of our neighbors. As Mike mentioned, though the relocation of the cemetery has been approved, we have decided to leave the cemetery in place. In order to hit the same density, we shifted around the mix of townhomes and single family homes and designed around the cemetery plot. Previously, our commitment was for at least 20% of the homes to be townhomes and at least 20% of the homes to be single family homes. we have increased our commitment on townhomes from 20% to 50%. Previously, we had committed to doing 3 of the listed active amenities, but we have now upped that to 4. We also eliminated the second stream crossing, which previously was intended for only utilities. Tim Cybers on our team worked to re-engineer the plan so that we can develop the site with only the 1 stream crossing, which is required anyway for that east-west collector road. Mayor Schul, I believe it was you that raised the concern about whether stormwater facilities and other items would be within the 600-foot wildlife corridor. We have committed to moving all of the stormwater facilities out of the corridor and would allow only the stream crossing for the road, the utilities within it, and the stormwater treatment for only that section of road. That's the only thing that would be allowed in the 600-foot wildlife corridor. Oh, and also the passive amenity, which in this case is actually the Greenway Trail. And actually that brings me to the final change, which is perhaps the biggest change from last time, which is that the developer has committed to provide a public amenity. Previously, there was a commitment to either construct the Greenway or dedicate the right-of-way for it. We now have committed not only to building the public Greenway, but also have committed to building a parking lot and a pocket park to serve as kind of a public trailhead. Before tonight's meeting, I believe I heard Councilmember Reese say that he had visited many of the city's 68 parks. Well, you can add another one to your list to visit, and I cannot really stress the importance of this commitment enough. The developer here recognizes that while housing is crucial to having a place to live, it's the other things which actually help make the place a home. As the president of Durham Central Park, I certainly recognize the importance of, and in fact advocate for parks in our city. I'm happy to be working with a client who shares the same interest. I think this park, small as it may be, is a step in the right direction and will be the catalyst for many memories. And I think it's something that is needed in the Searles region. If we could go to the next slide. So just to recap the highlights, this project includes a dedicated 600-foot wildlife corridor with strict limitations on development activities allowed within it. Again, it would just be that road that goes through it and the stormwater infrastructure for just that road. And then also the passive amenity, the Greenway, which we have committed to build. It also includes the construction of 2,100 feet of public Greenway with a public parking lot and a pocket park that will serve as a trailhead. The project will require the construction of 2,500 feet of a planned east-west collector road, which is shown on the city's transportation plan. And this project also includes a mile of off-site public water, 3/4 of a mile of off-site public sewer, numerous road improvements, and more than $2 million paid into the Searles Fund. And that is in addition to providing homes for 350 families. It is a significant investment and a major positive for the community. Now I'll turn it, if you can go to the next slide, I'll turn it back over to Mike to close out.
Thank you, Neil. Next, I wanted to talk about traffic impact. I know that's been a concern in this area. And I want to start with reiterating that our development plan has 4 required traffic improvements and 5 potential improvements that are the result of a collaborative effort between our traffic engineer working closely with the city and NCDOT engineers. And the point being that there's been a lot of energy, thought, and a lot of expertise coming up with these traffic improvements. Also, I wanted to add that as more development projects are proposed in the area, additional improvements are going to be required of them as well. And lastly, I wanted to point out, which I thought was very important, that based on the TIA, 70% of the traffic from this project will exit onto Virgil Road instead of Olive Branch Road. Next slide. Finally, I wanted to talk about the Raleigh-Durham housing market. the current shortage of available homes in the Raleigh-Durham market is definitely driving up prices which can be hopefully alleviated by increasing the supply. This upward pressure on home prices is only likely to continue with companies like Google and Apple and numerous others who are bringing jobs to this area. And basically, you know, the word is out that this is a great place to live and work, as we all know. For this project, the starting price point for the townhomes is planned to be $250,000 and $350,000 for single family homes, but those prices may be impacted by the increasing material prices. With the current historically low mortgage rate, these price points are affordable to middle income families, making 80 to 100% of the Durham average median income. And in conclusion, we feel like this is a great opportunity to provide housing for 350 families in Durham, and we hope to get your approval tonight. And we're all available to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ghosh and Mr. Foley. We have several other people signed up to speak, colleagues, and we'll go ahead and hear from them first before we take your questions for the applicant. I will begin with Kevin Curtin.
Okay.
Mr. Curtin, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you. I mostly was signed up to speak in case Susan Boyceau would not make it, but I will use this time just to let you know that the property at 1353 and 1501 Olive Branch has been in our family for many years. And so basically to put that in,
More than 40.
to put that into proximity of where Olive Branch Reserve is, that would border us on the southern and eastern property lines. And so we just wanted to go on the record and let the council know that we are 100% in support of this development, and with the voluntary annexation, and along with supporting the wildlife corridor, and understanding that they completely wrap around us, and continuing that wildlife corridor for we are on the other side of the creek, and that would in the future we understand and are in support of us maintaining the 300-foot wildlife corridor, and also understanding that both water and sewer will most likely at some point cross our property as well. But overall, just to go on the record and say that we support the development and we support the annexation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Curtin. Ms. Boyceau, are you with us? If so, you also have 3 minutes. You're on mute, Ms. Boyceau.
I would just validate what Kevin Curtin just said. I own the 1353 and the 1501 Olive Branch Road properties. And these two properties total 20 acres, and they border on the proposed Olive Branch Reserve in the southern and eastern property lines, on our southern and eastern property lines. I am in support of the development and the annexation and the annexation of this property.
Thank you very much, Ms. Boyceau. Ms. Dees, can you make yourself available to be heard, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome,
Oh,
and you also have 3 minutes.
Good. First of all, I've just been so impressed with how you handle your meetings. I grew up in Durham and have been away for quite a long time. But at any rate, it's been very interesting for me to, watch how y'all work and the questions you ask. So what I want to say, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, my name is Susan Dees. I am the youngest of 4 children born to Doctors John and Susan C. Dees. I've been asked to speak for my siblings as co-owners of this property currently. My parents moved to Durham in the 1930s and worked at Duke for 90 years between them. My father bought this land in 1945, so it has been in our family for 76 years. We called it the tree farm because we always found our Christmas trees there. My siblings and I believe our parents would be pleased with and supportive of the proposed development of this land. We hope the council will review this proposal favorably, and thank you for your consideration of our request. And I yield my time.
Thank you, Ms. Dees. Ms. Dees, this will not influence my vote, but let me just tell you that your mother, Dr. Susan Dees, when I was a young child, I had asthma very badly. And my parents would drive me down from Lynchburg to Duke Hospital to be treated by your mother. And she was an amazing doctor. And I think for about a 10-year period, from when I was maybe 6 years old to when I was 16 years old, your mother was my doctor. And so when I saw your name, I didn't want to ask because that's private, what your parents do. But when you said that, I just wanted to tell you that. She was a lifesaver for me. I did not know your family was still in town. I can see your mother as clear as a bell right now. Anyway, wanted to tell you thank you. All right, our next speaker will be we have heard from Ms. Boyso, Mr. Curtin, Ms. Dees. Is there anyone else that is planning to speak on item 20 that I have missed? All right. Mr. Ghosh, any final comments before we have questions from the council?
No, not at all, actually. We've got our team available to answer questions and hope to have your support tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, questions for staff or the applicants. Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question for Mr. Ghosh, and then I wanted to make a couple of comments, if that's okay. Good evening, Mr. Ghosh. Good to see you, at least hear you virtually.
Yeah.
So I understand, I keep asking questions about the corridor, and I appreciate your being clear about what is happening there and what's not. I think I'm set on the stormwater pieces, and I understand that the Greenway Trail will be built there. What about some of the amenities that are going along with the trail, like the parking spaces, the picnic tables? Is that stuff going to be in the corridor? Is it going to be beside the corridor? Where's that stuff going to be?
Beside the corridor. Yeah, that stuff is not in the corridor.
Okay. Well, that was my question. I know other folks will have other questions, but I'll just have some brief comments, which is that this applicant has made a lot of progress but since our last meeting in addressing many of the concerns that I heard from my colleagues about this proposal, and also a number of the concerns that were raised by members of the Planning Commission when they rejected this proposal unanimously. So first of all, thank you. That regardless of how I vote tonight, I think it's a better proposal and will serve the people of our city better if it does pass. For me, when I look at this proposal, I'm struck by, or trying to think about how I would vote if the wildlife corridor had not been an issue, if the cemetery was not on site. the two big things that I think were causing a lot of agita planning commission here with the council back in March. How would I approach this project if those two things had never been a part of the equation? And I think it's been clear to anyone who's watched our proceedings over the last year or so that I've viewed proposals in this area like that very skeptically. But having said that, the extent to which this developer has moved towards resolution of the concerns that a number of my colleagues raised last time makes it a difficult choice tonight, but I will just say that I look forward to hearing from my colleagues and then figuring out what the heck I'm going to do after that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Member. Comments or questions, colleagues, for the applicant or the staff? All right. Hearing none, I'm going to declare this public hearing closed, and the matter is now before the council. I'll accept either discussion or a motion. The motion would be to adopt an ordinance annexing 1101 Olive Branch Road into the city of Durham effective May 31, 2021, and to authorize the city manager enter into utility extension agreement with MF Development, L.L.C, DBA, Built Development.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Coltra's hand is raised, and I don't know if he's wanting to speak or if it's.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Coltra, did you, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I do, Mayor Schul. I did notice since the applicant did commit to leaving the cemetery on site, the current development plan does show that still to be removed. So if the council is going to recommend approval of this development plan tonight, staff would recommend that they update the existing condition sheet accordingly to show that not to be removed. And also we would recommend that they actually structure a text commitment also to for that to be protected, and also to provide a public access easement for that cemetery as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coltra. Mr. Coltra, is that something they can do tonight?
I think so. It would be up to the applicant to be able to propose something.
To be able to what? I'm sorry.
Propose some type.
Propose something. All right. Mr. Sivers and Mr. Ghosh, my guess is that you were feverishly trying to figure out exactly what language that you need. But when you are prepared, we'll be happy to hear you on the issue that Mr. Coltra raises.
Actually, we're not feverishly trying to figure it out. We talked about this earlier, and I think Tim Sivers will address it.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor Schul, Tim Sivers with Horvath Associates. I believe if it's okay with staff and the council that we can work out the final language later, but essentially everything that Danny stated is acceptable to us, including we will provide a buffer around that cemetery to provide some extra protection as well, of 25 feet for clarity.
Mr. Coltra, is that acceptable to staff?
Can you just give me just one moment?
Sure. And if you need more specificity, you can let us know. Colleagues, we have passed the 9 o'clock hour, but we're going to go ahead and finish this item, which I don't think will be long before we take our customary pause to support our closed captioners.
Mayor Schul, we've conferred, we would be acceptable to that.
All right, thank you very much. Maybe for our benefit, Mr. Sivers, you could go ahead and just restate what your commitments are.
Yes, sure. So we will provide public access to the cemetery. We will clarify the item on our existing condition sheet as to remain. We will also show that on our D100 sheet on the development sheet itself, as well as providing a 25-foot buffer around the cemetery.
And public access?
Public access, yes, that was the first thing I stated, sir, absolutely.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Coltra. Colleagues, any other questions or comments? And thank you, Councilmember Caballero, for spotting Mr. Coltra's hand there. Any other comments? All right. In order to pass this, we would need the motion that I just read, motion 1. Is there a motion to approve that item?
I'll move as read.
To adopt the ordinance. Thank you, council member. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Madam Clerk, will you please, I'm sorry, Councilmember Freeman, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment to note that this is a very different circumstance around this development, just acknowledging that similar to Councilmember Reese, noting that it does cause agita when there's a cemetery and the concern around the crossing and the wildlife. I just wanted to note that in this particular case, the developer's actual focus on making sure that the details were actually dealt with up beforehand or up front definitely plays well, and I can definitely support moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, council member. I actually want to make a comment too about that, which is for our planning commission really helped us here. They really helped us by bringing us these issues. And I think we did well by delaying. And just to recommend Mr. Ghosh and Mr. Sivers, it's easier if you do these things before you get to the planning commission. So I hope you will think about that next time in. All right, any other comments before we vote? All right,
well,
Madam,
Mr. Mayor, just real quick.
Freeline, sure.
Yeah, I was, since you brought it up, and Councilmember Freeman as well, I was just thinking about how helpful it would be to hear from the Planning Commission now, you know, that these changes had been made. I was reviewing them again in the context, you know, noting that these notes were kind of written months ago, December 4th. I was just curious to hear how they would react. And I know that's not kind of standard procedure, but particularly given that it was unanimously rejected, I guess I just want to reiterate and amplify what you said, Mr. Mayor, that if you take care of this on the front end, you know, we'll be in a much better position to make informed decisions. Because I would love if the Planning Commission could take another swing at this with the additional changes. So.
That's a fantastic point. All right, anything else, colleagues?
Mr. Mayor, I would second that if it were possible.
Yeah, I think that's where we all are.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a.
But I do understand that, you know, once the Planning Commission has heard it, which is why they rejected it, it would have been better for them to kind of work that out beforehand. So yes, thank you, Councilmember Freeline, for noting that.
All right, thank you, colleagues. I think we're ready to vote. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero?
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote aye. Councilmember
Reese?
No.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it. The motion passes 6-1. We'll now need a motion to adopt an ordinance amending the UDO by taking property out of the residential rural Falls Jordan Lake Watershed Protection Overlay District B, FJB, county jurisdiction. Hang on one second.
No worries, man.
And establishing the same as Plan Development Residential 3.220, PDR 3.220, Falls Jordan Lake Watershed Protection Overlay District B, FJB, city jurisdiction. And now, Councilmember Middleton.
All of that. Move is read.
The city attorney really started to want me to read these things fully now, and so I'm stuck with it. Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Councilmember Freeline. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero?
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman?
Nay.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it. The motion passes 5-2. And then motion 3 to adopt a consistency statement as required by NCGS 160D-605.
Move to adopt consistency.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, that we adopt the consistency statement. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes, was it 6-1? I'm sorry.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it was 6-1. I just wanted to note that the RR piece was the one thing I couldn't get past, though. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Council Member. Thank you, colleagues. I want to thank everybody who was here tonight, and we're expecting a really well done development there, and appreciate everyone. I want to thank all the neighbors that were here. Thank you for being here. And Ms. Dees, it was especially nice to meet you virtually. I can still do the breathing exercises that Dr. Dees taught me those many years ago. I might even still have my antique inhaler hanging out somewhere. So thank you. And it was kind of cool.
Steve, that
Colleagues,
gave me chills, man.
Yeah.
I
True story.
Wow.
True story. She was my savior. All right, colleagues, we're going to take a 5-minute break for our closed caption team, and we'll be back at 9:21. Remember to mute yourselves, colleagues, in case you're eating an apple and don't want to make noise. All right, colleagues, it is 9:21. And we are back in session. And we have our next item is also a public hearing item. That's item 21, Unified Development Ordinance Text Amendment, Omnibus Changes 16. I hope that Mr. Stock is with us.
Wouldn't have it any other way, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Good to see you, Mr. Stock.
Good evening. Michael Stock with the Planning Department. And as always, I will be leaving my video off in order to maintain contact with all of you and not cut in and out. Text Amendment TC 2101 proposes technical revisions and minor policy changes to various provisions of the Unified Development Ordinance, or UDO. The amendments are identified as necessary corrections, clarifications, reorganization, or other minor changes to clarify the intent of the regulations or codify interpretations of regulations, or even reflect minor policy changes that are not solely technical in nature. The complete discussion of the changes is found within your agenda packet report, and the Planning Commission recommended approval with a vote of 11-1 on March 9th. Changes subsequent to the Planning Commission have been made and are as follows, and they represent most of the discussion that was had at the commission. First of all, the neighborhood meeting and pre-submittal meeting requirements were changed back to maintain a requirement of just at least one meeting, although more can be performed if recommended at the meetings and as would be seen on any cases that come before you. Revisions to deviations of development plans were also removed, but they will be included in a forthcoming set of amendments focused on applications and permits, which are primarily in Article 3. Additional text to paragraph 941G along rights-of-way is removed, but is also anticipated to be included in a forthcoming set of omnibus changes. That one is regarding buffers along right-of-way. And co-living parking requirements were revised to be consistent with the parking for a dwelling unit, and the term co-housing was also removed. That was a discussion also at the Planning Commission. As a reminder, 2 actions are requested tonight, first on the ordinance itself, and then second on the appropriate statement of consistency. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stock. Colleagues, you have heard the report from staff, and I'm going to now declare this public hearing open. And first, I'm going to ask if there are any questions for staff by members of the council. Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question about, hold on, the changes to in Article 5 use regulations, adding co-living as a new group living use. Can you help me understand what the practical effect of those changes are?
The practical effect is to provide for a modernized consideration of housing choices today, rather than the old 1960s version of a rooming house or boarding house definition that focused on number of guest rooms and whether food was being served or not served and that kind of thing. And it does allow for more of an expansive allowance of that living arrangement or housing choice.
Great, thank you. The other thing I wanted to ask about was the within the district intensity standards, the commercial general height limit and in the was raised from 50 to 55 feet. We got an email earlier today from a resident who had some questions about that. I got a really good answer from our planning director on that, but for folks who didn't get that email, I thought I'd give you the opportunity to explain exactly what's going on there and what's not going on there.
Sure, and I was the author for most of that email. So,
I figured.
I think the biggest crux of the issue, and just to come up at the Planning Commission hearing, was the impact on Northgate Mall and the allowance of additional height there. Northgate Mall is not zone CG, it is zone CC, and there are no changes to the height allowances for the CC district. There is a portion, I guess people associate it with Northgate Mall, but there's the Shops at Northgate, which is up Guest Road a little bit, where I'll name drop Randy's Pizza is, that kind of shopping center. Love it. I'm sorry. Love the pizza. I'm a Northeasterner. What do you want? That is zoned CG with a development plan. I believe it was done back in '97, and that specifies actually a height limitation of 24 feet. So even these changes would not impact that. They would still need to rezone that to get additional height. The changes that we made are just really to bring a lot of consistency with height, where there's different zoning districts have different variations of height, and they kind of the RUM district allows for 55 feet. The RS district, which part of the RSM district would currently allow for unlimited amount of height if it's shown on a development plan. But we're bringing that back down for consistency also to 55 feet with a minor special use permit. And then residential uses in non-residential districts like OI or CG, they point to those districts anyway, and they would allow for, if they point to those residential districts, they would get 5 feet more height than what would be normally allowed if they were not doing residential development, if you're just doing an office building. So we were just looking for consistency with those districts and the different uses that would be allowed.
Mr. Stock, I appreciate that explanation. The resident who reached out to us emailed me separately after I sent her that and said that made a lot of sense. She was especially relieved to hear that this didn't have an impact on the Northgate situation, which is a whole different kettle of fish.
Absolutely.
The last thing I wanted to say, well, two things. First of all, these omnibus packages are always so well done. Such great small changes that in the aggregate over the years have really improved our UDO. So Mr. Stock, I want to thank you for that, and also say congratulations on your promotion as the new land use manager. I think that will be, first of all, that's great for you, but it's even better for us as elected leaders who rely on the advice that we get from great folks like you in the planning department, and also great for our community. So congratulations. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council Member. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council Member. And Mr. Stock, I'll add all of our congratulations. That's great. I hope that doesn't mean the end of Mike Stock, however.
Nope. Text amendments will move over with me into the land use section.
All right, great. All right. Colleagues, other questions for Mr. Stock? We do have a speaker to this item as well, but I want to just make sure that if there are no other questions for Mr. Stock first. Mr. Stock, I do have one. You talked about the changes that were made per the Planning Commission comments, and I appreciated that. Actually, I have two. I'm sorry. Commissioner Miller had comments about granting additional discretion in a couple of areas to the planning director, which were concerns that he raised. These were not persuasive to the rest of the Planning Commission, but I wondered if you had any thoughts to offer on that.
We took a look at that section, and that was in regards to the deviations to development plan section, and quite honestly, that section as currently written is actually somewhat discretionary, and we are removing a lot of that text to make it even less discretionary. Talking it over with the planning director and knowing that we had an Article 3 text amendment coming forward that focuses on applications and permits, and also taking a look at how that whole section was really worded, we thought we could do a better job and make it a little clearer and more concise. So we took a step back to try to just make it better. But in terms of discretion, I would say that even as written for the Planning Commission, it was removing discretion that's currently in the ordinance.
There is a group of small local developers who are doing infill and related housing types, missing middle, and they have talked to me, and I know to some of my colleagues, I'm not sure yet if they've met with all of my colleagues, but about some changes that will make it easier for them to build. And I know they had wanted some of these changes in an upcoming omnibus. Have you all been in conversation with them?
We have, and and we got a list, a very lengthy list of changes. Again, the planning director and I had sat down with them, so we are aware of their wish list.
All right, thank you very much. And then my final question is, this has already been, this has been to JCCPC as well as the Planning Commission, is that right?
That's correct. Almost all text amendments start with the Joint City County Planning Committee to give them a heads up for members to provide comment and feedback and direction. And then, yes, it goes to the Planning Commission for the first.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
Colleagues, any other questions for staff? Any questions for staff at this time? Councilmember Middleton?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I was adjusting my glasses. Good catch, Doug.
Okay, sorry.
That's right.
All right. Okay. We have Mimi Kessler is here to speak on this item. Ms. Kessler, we're glad to have you. Welcome.
Thank you,
you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, City Council and Mr. Stock. I wanted to thank the staff for removing the section 3.5.12 in response to the Planning Commission feedback. I still have problems with these omnibus text changes because I think they're very ominous. And so I look at them carefully, and it distresses me that we made some progress in terms of impervious surfaces related to driveway width, but now it's going to be widened again. And I think it should be only widened when there's a 3-car garage, which is what Mr. Stock had said at the Planning Commission was the necessity. It shouldn't just be wide open like that. I also don't like the use of this minor special use permit track, because it's unclear to me if there's any public notice about those minor special uses, which I don't consider to be minor. I think that taking the height of a building from 45 feet to 75 feet is pretty major. And I'm also aware that a minor special use permit was used related to a neighborhood adjacent to the new Northern High School construction, and they're going to have 150 school buses or so twice a day coming and going through their neighborhood, and they had no notice about that. So I'm going to be starting to dog minor special use permits, same way that I dog text amendment changes. And congratulations, Mr. Stock. I think that you are well deserved of a promotion, and I'm happy to hear that you're not going to give up the text amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kessler. Mr. Stock, could you comment on the 2 issues that Ms. Kessler raised? One is notice regarding a minor special use permit, and the other, which was also a Planning Commission discussion, which was the width of the driveways. And I mean, I know, I'm sure from my colleagues who are on the JCCPC that you will know this and you know, been through this once, but forgive me. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the minor special use permits, those do go through a public hearing process. It's a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing process with the Board of Adjustment. Public notice is given out, very much like for zoning notices. Letters go out to, I believe, 600 feet to all property owners from the site. It is listed within the public notice listserv that goes out weekly. Signs are put on the site, and it is advertised in a newspaper. So it does go through a public hearing process. It is a different hearing than a legislative process that council holds. It follows a much more formal courtroom-like type setup. Where evidence has to be presented to the Board of Adjustment in order to make for the applicant to make certain findings of fact about the application. For the driveway issue, the actual, for the longest time, and even into the prior merge zoning ordinance prior to the UDO, it used to be that you could just do any width driveway as long as you showed it on a plot plan. And then we changed that to, that went down to 25 feet just very recently, I believe the last year or so. It was brought to our attention through development review that it was just causing not only issues with you know, folks who were looking to have three-car garages, but it just actually wound up creating a lot of non-conforming issues with people who just happen to have wider driveways, maybe a driveway that kind of wrapped around the side of the house for additional parking or what have you. So we felt that 30 feet was a nominal change. It does not get change the additional or the more limitations that were put on driveways through approval of EHC, as you recall, like such as infill standards or the small lot option have additional limits on driveways, driveway widths, even driveway construction, and that does not change that at all.
Thank you, Mr. Stock.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues, let me first ask, is there anyone else present who would like to speak on this item? This is a public hearing item. If so, please make yourself known in the chat. All right, colleagues, any more questions for Councilmember Freeman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Scott, can you say that one more time? You mentioned the non-conforming issue with 30-foot driveways. Is there a limit on the length?
No,
if it wraps around the house, or you?
No, there's no limit on the length.
Okay, so it's just the curve itself might be 30 feet wide.
There's actually I believe in the city code, I think there's limits to curb cut widths, but it could flare out a little bit from that once you get on the property.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues, if there are no further questions or comments, I'm going to declare this public hearing closed, and the matter is now back before the council. We need two motions. The first is adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance, incorporating revisions Article 1, General, Article 3, Applications and Permits, Article 5, Use Regulations, Article 6, District Intensity Standards, Article 7, Design Standards, Article 8, Environmental Protection, Article 9, Landscaping and Buffering, Article 10, Parking and Loading, Article 11, Sign Standards, Article 12, Infrastructure and Public Improvements, Article 16, Design Districts, and Article 17, Definitions. Is there a motion to that effect?
Moved as read.
Moved.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Sure, council member.
Just noting, is it possible to pull those items out and approve it, or do I have to just vote no on all of them?
So let me just ask, I think that if you had something that you wanted to take out, you could make a separate motion to that effect. I'm not sure that, you know, you'd have to convince the rest of us, let's just say. Okay. So do you want to do that?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we start with that then? What is it that you would like to take out?
And it's specific to the minor special use. I would like for us to take a look at the minor special use public notice process. And so I don't want to move that forward without addressing it. Other than that, okay. I do get the widths, the driveway widths, that's fine. And the infill standards, all that, that's fine as well. I think
so the minor special use permit,
because I feel like there's going to be a lot more of them in the coming years, acknowledging that this is the way that folks move forward, these single like one-off projects. And if we don't get the notice correct now, I don't know when that will be within the next six to 12 months. And I know a lot is going to happen.
Okay. Would you be, you know, it's certainly within your rights just to make a motion to take that out, and the staff could let us know what that would be Another option would be that if you had other suggestions you want to make to staff, that they could, you could ask them to look at those as well. But I'm happy to do it either way you want.
I would be open to, if staff could say that if they could extend it to 1,200 square feet, 1,200 feet notice, and then also just noting that when it's specific to an old historic neighborhood like Old Farm, that there'd be some type of a distinction made so that it comes forward. Because there's, what I'm trying to get at is that the equity aspect of this is that there are folks who are fixed income and not focused on these types of matters in that way involved. We want to make sure that we get as more folks involved in the conversation, so that maybe like the inter-neighborhood council or the planning commission, like there has to be a way for someone who has some understanding about what the issues are to come in and ask the questions. Right now, there's not. And so the folks just hear about it on the tail end, and then they're trying to figure out what it is or trying to figure it out on their own. And it just becomes a back and forth battle that we can't manage because it's already been approved.
Ms. Young? Ms. Young, would you like to speak to us?
Yeah, sorry, I lost my internet connection right as you were calling on me. I apologize.
That's the way we do it here.
So I think Councilmember Freeman brings up an excellent point, and it's something that we as staff have been looking at. One of the things that I've talked with the staff about doing is essentially an equity omnibus, re-examining all of our procedures and requirements in the ordinance from an equity lens, particularly a racial equity lens. And I will say that while I'm not opposed to changing the notification distance, I think the real problem is that the minor special use permit process is probably not the best process for some of these things that have really large impacts. Those should be, in my opinion, legislative processes. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be re-examining. To me, something that's very cut and dry, small variances, for fence height or something that is really having minimal impact, those are the kind of things that should be before the Board of Adjustment. It's really difficult for the community to get themselves together and have the, by general statute, we are required to give what I consider fairly limited notice, 10 to 25 days. There's a maximum. We can't notice earlier than that. Or, we could, but we'd have to do it all over again anyway to comply with the general statutes. And so that really puts the community, I think, in a difficult position of not having as much time to prepare as applicants do, which is not really an equitable position to be in. So there are, again, I'm not opposed to changing that, but I think fundamentally the problem is not a notice problem, but it's an issue of what's the best or the most appropriate approval mechanism for those type of large impact projects.
Ms. Young, thank you for that.
I was going to say thank you, Ms. Young. I noted, so the time lapse with the 10 to 25 days, is that also in this?
That's by general statute, and that's not being proposed to change.
And that's
state statute.
Most of the reason why I'm trying to make the adjustment is because of my experience. I know what it is to be on the other side of trying to pull together $1,000 to get an attorney who can actually come to a Board of Adjustment meeting and argue the case on behalf of the neighborhood. If there is, and I'm really like, it's not just racial equity, it's also like ability, and so many even on the co-housing side, like there are a number of nuances in this minor special use permit process that I really am uncomfortable with, and I have not figured out what the mechanisms could be to change it. So if you're saying that it's the omnibus, I would just ask that you expand it a little further around equity, and then also include me in those conversations, because I think that there are a lot of folks who ask me the questions and I don't have the answers because I'm not on the joint like JCCPC, and I'm not paying attention as closely as I would if I were on it.
Absolutely, and I'm calling it equity omnibus, but it won't be mixed in with other things. It'll be a series of amendments that are focused on all sorts of equity issues like you raised. So the other thing that we're going to try and do, I think in response to some community members' concern, including Ms. Kessler's, that things get buried in omnibus, it's kind of dense and hard to get through, is when we have enough of the same type of amendment, to just call it out, pull it out, and make it a standalone amendment and be super clear and transparent about what it is. So you'll be seeing more of that moving forward too.
Thank you.
Ms. Young, thank you. That was super helpful. Appreciate your response to Councilmember Freeman's questions. I'm excited about what you said. I completely agree that the minor special use permit process is very problematic. I didn't know that we had state law that required us to just have such short notice for people. I'm constantly discovering state laws that are hindering us, but this was one I didn't know about. And I think that that is another reason to do just exactly what you said, which is change the things that are inside the minor special use permit process and make more things legislative. So thank you. Very super helpful. And appreciate Councilmember Freeman for surfacing those. All right, Councilmember Freeman, I just want to ask, are you, having heard Ms. Young's plans to the changes and process she's proposed, are you good with going ahead with this?
I am okay with going ahead with this. I would not say good, but I will withdraw that request to pull the item from the list.
All right, thank you. Colleagues, we need a motion to adopt the, as I read, motion number 1 there to adopt the ordinance.
Mayor, I think I thought I offered the motion.
You probably did, and I forgot. Why don't you do it again, council member? Make the motion.
Absolutely. Move as read.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Caballero. Motion by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Councilmember Caballero. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon.
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes unanimously, and we'll now move to the consistency statement. Is there a motion to adopt the consistency statement?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Reese, second by Councilmember Caballero. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon.
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Do you vote aye, Councilmember Reese?
I vote aye.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And thank you, Mr. Stock. Thank you, Ms. Young. And we appreciate all the work that brought us to this, this omnibus text amendment, and we look forward to more. We'll now move to item 22, zoning map change, CASA North Duke. And we'll first hear the report from staff.
Thank you very much. Good evening again. Michael Stock with the Planning Department. Daniel Jewell of Coulter Jewell Thames, PA proposes to change the zoning designation of 4 parcels of land totaling approximately 2.5 acres located along the west side of North Duke Street, south of West Carver Street, and north of Stadium Drive. The current zoning is office institutional with a development plan, or OID, and residential urban 5, or RU5. The applicant proposes to change this designation to Planned Development Residential 8.000 or PDR 8.000. The change is proposed to change, no change is proposed to the current watershed overlay designation of the FJB. The properties are currently designated office on the future land use map. If the proposed zoning is approved, staff recommends a change to the FLUM to designate the property as medium high density residential. Planning Commission recommended approval 11-1 on March 9th. The applicant was granted an expedited hearing by council on March 1st, and therefore the Planning Commission was not permitted to continue the hearing. However, it does not preclude council from continuing its public hearing or limit any other action council may wish to make regarding this request. The plan indicates a list of committed elements detailed on the cover sheet of the plan and summarized in the report. The foremost is a commitment to affordable housing for all the units as defined by the UDO, which mandates a maximum of 60% AMI at a time of lease for rentals, 30-year minimum for that affordability clause, and monitoring through the Community Development Department. Subsequent to the Planning Commission hearing, the applicant added an additional committed commitment to prohibit all construction traffic from accessing the site from Birmingham Avenue. The applicant discussed this with staff since residents who spoke at the Planning Commission hearing were concerned about traffic to and from the site. Thus, all traffic, construction and regular, is limited to North Duke Street. Additionally, a planning commissioner brought up a concern regarding the proposed building envelope. As you know, development plans are required to show them. This plan shows two: one, primary or definitive envelope outside of the required 100-foot stream buffer that is shown on the plan, and a secondary one that shows a limited amount of encroachment into that stream buffer. The secondary envelope does not automatically allow the encroachment, but shows the extent to which the applicant may seek it through the special approvals during site plan review, which is through a quasi-judicial hearing with the Board of Adjustment. Similar contingencies have been applied to other development aspects on other development plans, such as access points that may not be approved unless approved by NCDOT, or even more recently with Harriet's Place, where a variance to a project boundary buffer was reserved as a contingency, which raised no concern by the Planning Commission. The City Attorney's Office has also reviewed this and had no concern. The Planning Commission did recommend approval, as I mentioned before, 11-1 on March 9th. And again, Council was requested to take two actions, first on the ordinance itself, and then the appropriate statement of consistency. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Any applicant and a representative of CASA are available for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stock. Colleagues, you have heard the report from staff. I'm now going to declare this public hearing open and first ask if there are any questions for staff by members of the council. Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have, can you, hold on a second. Wait a minute. Mr. Stock, can you tell me a little bit more? I must not have been paying close enough attention to the Harriet's Place case. I didn't know that there was a condition there that was conditional upon some future variance by the Board of Adjustment. Can you help refresh my recollection about that?
Yeah, there was, excuse me, sorry, Michael Stock with the Planning Department. Yes, actually one of the text commitments was a reservation to seek a variance from project boundary buffers as necessary.
Okay, that's great. The other question I had was the kind of the notice sign for this particular case. I know that one was placed on North Duke Street, sort of in the north end of the property. Was there one placed at any of the entrances to Birmingham Avenue?
There is no specific entrance on Birmingham Avenue. I can't say for certain whether there was. I'm hoping a sign was placed there, but I do not know offhand for certain if there was one.
Okay, well, there wasn't one today, so that's what I can tell you about that.
Thank you.
And I was pretty surprised to see the only sign, the only notice sign was on the very speedy North Duke edge of the property. But I'm assuming that if that was the only sign in place, that was sufficient to meet the requirements in this kind of process.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right, Mr. Stock?
I believe so. I would have to look at the state statutes to make sure that does meet it. I'm assuming it does meet it. If not, we would have to come back and get this reheard.
Okay. Well, I don't know what to do about that, but those are the questions I had. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Member. All right, any questions for Mr. Stock before we hear from members of the public? Okay, we have two people signed up for this item. We also have another person here who I think may want to speak on this item. Those people are Mr. Dan Jewell and Ms. Jess Brandis. I also see Zenke Batson here. Zenke Batson, are you here to speak on this item as well? And if you are, could you put that in the chat, please? Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you. Zenke Batson, are you here as a proponent or an opponent of this?
I live on Birmingham, so I can just speak to the fact that there was no notification on our street or at Wisteria. And I'll just share that the majority of people who are living in homes that will be affected by this are renters. So the only way they know about it is me as a homeowner letting them know.
Ms. Batson?
Yes.
We have I'm going to get back to you in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
We have a process that we have to go through here on the public hearing. So I'll get back to you in just a second, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. We'll start with the proponents and then we'll get to you. Are you, let me ask you again, Ms. Batson, are you a proponent or an opponent of this development? Ms. Batson, can you make yourself heard? Yeah.
I guess I'm not specifically one or the other.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. That was helpful. All right, Mr. Jewell and Ms. Brandis, would you like to speak on this item?
Yes, sir. Just for a few minutes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. And I hope maybe you can address the question of the sign as well.
I will the best I can. So thank you for your time. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Dan Jewell again. Good to see you all. The good folks at CASA have asked us to help them with the rezoning of the site. It's a somewhat challenging piece of property, but we're very excited to bring this request before you. I want to thank Mr. Stock for all his work. He gave a very thorough staff report, and I will not be repetitive on most of it. As Mr. Stock said, this site is largely defined by stream buffers. In fact, 75% of this property is in riparian buffer. There's a 50-foot state mandated buffer, and Durham has another 50 feet on top of that because it's in the FJB watershed. There was actually a previous rezoning on this property back in the 90s for an office building. That building would have been 100% in the stream buffer. Of course, the stream buffers did not exist 25 years ago. That's not what we want to do. That's not what we're going to do. But absent the D on the O&I D portion of the property, we would actually be able to do this project with a site plan approval rather than a rezoning. But that's not what it is. So we are here making this request. And what we are proposing is a small apartment building with something less than 20 units. And most importantly, as Mr. Stock said, we're committing to those units being 100% affordable as defined by the UDO. We're not requesting an affordable housing density bonus, even though we would be entitled to one, because we know the site won't support it. There's only so much that can go on this site, and that's the conversation we've had with the neighbors. And to that end, what I would like to say that when we had our virtual neighborhood meeting last year, the neighbors did raise some concerns over the loss of trees on this property. Of course, as you can imagine, they've been able to enjoy for all the years they've lived there woods between the back of their houses and Duke Street. This site is sandwiched in between the two. So we let them know that we would meet out there on site and talk about stream buffers and talk about buffers and talk about the woods. And we've actually done that twice now. The rallying point was there on Birmingham, where a little bit of the site touches Birmingham Avenue. I can't recall if there was a sign out there or not, even though if I've been out there a couple times. I will trust the neighbors on whether one was there or not. But as you can imagine, the primary interest by the neighbors was, again, the fact that they would be losing some of the trees and woods behind their houses that they've enjoyed for so many years. And what we talked about in both occasions is how we could mitigate that. We promised we would meet with them when we got to the site plan approval phase, talk about strategic buffering, even augmenting what's required by the ordinance, and working with them to select evergreen native plants and that sort of thing. As Mr. Stock reported, we did receive a strong recommendation for approval from the Planning Commission, and we would hope that we would have the same reaction from you this evening. With that, I'd like to introduce Jess Brandis. She's the Senior Director of Real Estate Development for CASA. She'll tell you a little bit about the proposed housing, and Jess might also talk to you about what would happen to their funding if we had to go back and re-advertise and start this process over again. And I'll be here for questions as they come along. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, members of council. Can you hear me? Hi, as Dan said, hi, I'm Jess Branda, Senior Director of Real Estate Development with CASA. Glad to be here tonight. As Dan shared, we're planning a small apartment community that will be 100% affordable. We have applied to the city for funding, did so as part of the RFP for the first tranche of bond funds that were available last summer. We were recommended for funding by the Community Development Department, and prioritizing housing for people who've experienced homelessness at that site for with incomes at or below 30% of the area median income. So focusing on really that hardest to house population that CASA specializes in. The council, or excuse me, the Community Development Department recommended that funding contingent upon getting gap financing from the Housing Finance Agency through the state. We've applied for that. We believe we will be getting a recommendation any day now that they have approved that funding. Their requirement is that the zoning is correct and in compliance by their board approval, which their board meets in June. So that is why we requested the expedited rezoning, so that we could ensure that we got full rezoning approval in May to meet that NCHFA deadline in June, so that we'd be able to get their funds and then meet the city's commitment or the request of ours, their contingency to have full funding by July. So that's a little bit about the timing of the dollars that we're hoping to use to develop this housing. And I am here for questions as well.
Thank you, Ms. Brandis. We'll now hear from Ms. Batson. Ms. Batson, can you make yourself available to be heard?
Yes. I'm just here to listen about the proposal and to learn about it, but I did want to share that I didn't ever see a sign there, and in relation to what you were speaking out about prior to this, I think it would help renters to be notified of these things, because many of the people on our street are renters, and so none of them were aware of the project through their landlords. So that it seems helpful. Some people are renting for really long periods of time, and they're not aware of these things unless someone who's a homeowner lets them know.
Thank you very much for your comments, Ms. Batson. We appreciate your being here. All right, there's no one else here who's to speak on this item. And so we'll now hear any questions or comments, and maybe we may hear from staff. Anything you want to tell us about the signs, Ms. Young or Mr. Stock at this point?
We looked into the legal requirements, and there's no specific legal requirement to have it on every right of way. The frontage along Birmingham is minor. We do feel that it was satisfied with the signage along North Duke Street.
Thank you very much. All right, colleagues, any questions or comments at this time? Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the work of the staff on this. And good evening to those that are presenting on this proposal. It'll probably come as no surprise to anyone that I am predisposed to support this, because it deals with affordable housing and increases our affordable housing stock. I do want to ask Dan. Good to see you. Good to see your picture. And our friends from CASA. The Planning Commission voted overwhelmingly to support it, but Commissioner Miller makes a very direct assertion that what you're proposing is unlawful, and that you should be seeking relief via variance as opposed to legislative action on the council. Do you want to speak to that? I'm sure you read the comments from the Planning Commission. Do you want to speak to the merits of Commissioner Miller's characterization?
Councilor Middleton, I will start. I think I'll need staff support on this. Yes, I was there, and the conversation came around whether or not the council had the authority to approve an alternate building envelope that would potentially become a building envelope if a variance was granted. And Mr. Miller felt that the council did not have the authority to approve that. Our contention, and I think Mr. Stock will step in on this as well, as I hope, is you are not approving a variance. All you're doing is you're saying there's an alternate limits of a building envelope that could be the building envelope if the Board of Adjustment were to grant that variance. And of course, the Board of Adjustment is the only authority that has the ability to grant that variance. And what it goes back to, and this is based on my 30 years of experience of doing development plans in Durham, that we do have to show a building envelope. And if we violate that building envelope, we have to come back to you and the Planning Commission. So it's a timing matter. And Mr. Stock, I don't know if you want to add a little more flavor to that, but that is my understanding is the reason that Mr. Miller voted against it. It was strictly legal procedural is a way to sum it up.
Yeah, Councilmember Middleton, Michael Stock again. Yeah, as Mr. Joel stated, this does not grant the variance. It just identifies the extent to which they could even seek a variance, and it's required to show all potential building envelopes on the development plan. So just as we talked about earlier about prior development plans reserving the right to seek a variance on other development approvals, they are reserving the right, limiting actually the extent to what they could even seek on the development plan.
So in congratulations, by the way, Michael. So in short, in the staff's opinion, we have the juice to do this.
Yes, because you're not granting. You're just yes, quick, short, to the point answer. Yes.
Cool.
Mike, let me chime in real quick and just say that this is no different than on some development plans you all may see, for instance, an access point noted with a comment that because of some environmental feature or something that the access point may not be provided because at the time of the site plan it may be determined that they can't, right? Or other things like that where the applicant is being really transparent up front that some other things may happen in the development of the project that may change. And so they're being very transparent in that you could have scenario A or scenario B and you can see them. That doesn't mean that you have the authority to grant the variance. You don't, that's correct. They're just trying to show, just like when folks will proffer something, but then say it has to be subject to NCDOT approval or something else. It's the same situation.
Got you. Very helpful. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Member. Colleagues, any other comments or questions? Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Councilor Middleton for really clarifying that point, and thank you to Mr. Stock and Ms. Young for helping us walk through that. I think the other thing that I found compelling in Commissioner Miller's written comments was the fact that this, even though we're not granting a variance, even though we are not the ones that are making the decision about whether or not it's okay for the building envelope to infringe on the stream buffer, it does kind of raise that possibility. And we don't really have, one of the most compelling things he said was, how much is this going to infringe on the buffer? What are the environmental impacts of that? How do we balance that against the need for this kind of low-income housing in Durham? I don't know how to do that. But maybe it's good that I'm not on the Board of Adjustment, so I don't have to make that decision. But I think that to me is the harder question. Not is this a good idea? Do we need this kind of housing? Is this a good site for that housing? Which I think is arguable, but I'm fine with it. The issue is really how does anybody make that decision? What is the calculus that says that says you can infringe on the storm buffer this much in return for this much affordable housing. That I don't know how we do that. I don't have any good answers. I'm not even really sure why I'm saying this, except it's really like I found those comments from Commissioner Miller really compelling, and something that I guess I'm going to have to think about, because we're going to have, this is not the last one of these we're going to do, God willing. I mean, we need to do this kind of housing, and the places where the land is cheap enough to make this pencil out are going to be these kinds of properties. I see Councilmember Freeman shaking her head. I exactly, absolutely right. So, you know, we're going to have to figure it out. You know, I think we are fortunate to have a group like CASA be in this fight with us to create additional housing opportunities for folks who can't afford what the market is offering right now. We're very fortunate. We're also fortunate that folks like Dan Jewell are willing to step in and support them as they do that. And we're also fortunate to have a great staff that can bring us these projects with the kind of insight and analysis that we need to move forward. As I said, I have a lot of questions about this kind of process. How do we figure that out? But all said, frankly, Michael Stock had me at the city attorney's office, reviewed this and said we can do it. That works for me. I have so much respect for Commissioner Miller, but ultimately he's not our city attorney. And so I think the more compelling issue he raises is one we're going to have to think about as a council is how are we going to keep balancing those issues? And so with that, I will stop talking now. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Any further comments? Councilmember Freeman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Middleton and Reese, for getting to some of those questions. I just have one question and then a few comments. So can I ask what exactly the dollar amount is of this request from the Housing Finance Committee? Because I'm concerned that we're making a lot of compromises for a dollar amount. I have no idea what it is. And is my computer frozen?
No, you're fine. Ms. Brandis, that question's for you, I believe.
It's about $600,000.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. It helps to frame the conversation a little bit, and just acknowledging that we can't do more of the same and expect different results. And so if you build the envelope in the stream buffer, and this has been the same issue that I've been having with many of the wetlands, and acknowledging that this is where the cheapest land is going to be. It's where our parks are. It's where it floods. And if we don't do the work to make sure that the infrastructure is in place around it, which and full disclosure, I don't know in this section of North Duke Street whether or not their sewer, their water has been updated and when the last time, you know, like there are measures that need to be put in place, or stakes that need to be put in place. And I usually can depend on the residents in the area to say so or not. And in this case, where we are using a minimum qualification of a notice on Duke Street, I feel even more uncomfortable. And even with the city attorney signing off, it's still a bare minimum around what we need to do as a community, acknowledging that we're talking about equitable engagement, we're talking about equity, we're talking about affordable housing, but you can't make affordable housing in the stream buffers and then wonder why it's sinking. So I just want to put all those comments out front and just say that I don't feel comfortable with the fact that the neighbors who will be directly impacted, who are renters, aren't even aware that this project is happening. And Miss Batson, I didn't catch her name, is trying to listen in to hear what's going to happen in her own neighborhood. That all makes me like uncomfortable. So I just wanted to put that up front, and I'm certain folks will push back on it, but I cannot support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Other comments? Okay, I'll make one comment. These are 20 units of housing for people at 30% of the area median income or less. The council has already voted a significant amount of our own funding to support this, and it's going to have the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency's funding as well. This is the hardest housing to build. And one of the reasons that it's on such a difficult lot, I'm sure, is that it's as Councilmember Reese has pointed out, this is part of what it takes to build housing that's affordable to people at a very, very low income. Whether or not this will go, I think one thing to be clear about is we're not saying that this will be built to the outer envelope of the optional envelope that's provided. That will be something that the Board of Adjustment takes up, and they will have to decide that. And they'll be measuring whether or not they think this should be done in the larger envelope and the smaller envelope. But either envelope will contain the affordable housing that we would like to see built. And I just think, this is an absolutely critical project by the best developer of this kind of housing for the least of these that we have in our community. Any other comments? Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to associate myself with your comments. I want to echo my colleague, Councilor Freeman, and I don't, what she said is so important to keep in mind. And she's consistently a clarion. I think she's a clarion call for us to be mindful of the least of these as well. So I want to underscore that and think that should always be before us. I have such immense respect for CASA and have watched their work for years in the city. And, this is almost like having good credit. This is what happens when you've got a good track record. My belief is that if there's any organization that's going to do it right and that's going to be mindful and vigilant and careful about the things that we need to be careful about in developing this housing, I believe it's CASA. And that gives me, with full consideration of what Councilor Freeman is saying, what gives me comfort in supporting this tonight is just the incredible gravitas and expertise and history and goodwill that the principals in this development played, namely CASA. So for that reason, and based upon what you said, Mr. Mayor, I mean, we need this housing, and these folks need housing at this level, at this AMI level. I'll be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Colleagues, anyone else? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't really plan on saying anything about this item because it just felt obvious to me that we should do this, but I didn't want my lack of comment to be interpreted as being somehow neutral. I'm actually super excited about this project. I think that it'll be, that it's great for our city, that we need more projects like this. And yeah, if we, as we build more and more of the easy plots to build in the city, we're going to see more and more projects on lots that are tricky and that are more difficult to build, and thus are more affordable for our affordable housing agencies to do something with. And that's something I think we'll be seeing more and more of, is these, tricky lots with a lot of, not a lot of actual available space, but folks are willing to do as much as they can with it. And I think that is great. I'm super excited about this housing, and just wanted to be clear that I really like it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other comments? Councilmember Freelon?
Yeah, I just wanted to underscore what my colleagues have said. Affordable housing is one of the most important things that we've committed to as a council, and this is a rare opportunity to make a significant investment at a low AMI. I've been a little under the weather since getting my second COVID shot, but Jilly, when you said, you didn't want your lack of speaking up to be interpreted as, ambivalence about this, that really resonated. I want CASA to know, and Durham to know that this is important, and we definitely want to find ways to do more of this. So thank you.
Thank you, council member, and hope you feel better soon. All right, colleagues, any further comments? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important to just note, this is not about CASA. This is specific about environmental justice and acknowledging how displacement works. And so just to be clear, I don't have a problem with the project. I think that there's a process, and the parts of the process that were skipped here feel enormous for me, and I cannot support this. I would wholeheartedly love to see affordable housing on the site in a way that followed a process where folks in the community were engaged. And that is a simple, like, short of it. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Any further comments? All right, colleagues, we'll now move, I'll now close this public hearing, and we'll now accept a motion to adopt an ordinance amending the UDO by taking property out of the office institutional development plan and residential urban 5, Falls Jordan District, B, FJB districts, and establishing the same as planned development residential 8.000, PDR 8.000, Falls Jordan District, B, FJB district.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Councilmember Reese, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero?
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman?
Nay.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes 6-1. We'll now need a motion to adopt the consistency statement.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Reese, seconded by Councilmember Middleton to adopt the consistency statement. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero?
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you to Ms. Batson for being here tonight. Thank you for Ms. Brandis and Mr. Jewell for being here tonight. And we look forward to this being a great project. Thank you so much. Colleagues, we have reached the end of our time. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just appreciate it. Just a moment to note that I think that the equity aspect of this is, if this was not CASA, what would have come about, and about moving forward, how we address that inequity, acknowledging that there are other organizations in this community that could be doing this work as well, that will not be expedited in the same way. And so I just wanted to just put a pinpoint in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, we've reached the end of our meeting tonight, and I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned at 10:24 p.m. Look forward to seeing you at the work session on Thursday. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.